What's up guys, this is your favorite fanfic YouTuber, the Fanfic Majesty, and welcome to another amazing video. You can follow me on Patreon for exclusive stories.
3FG. Chapter 44 Seaman Jinbei. Advertise here. The scan of the individual was successful. Tony Chopper, the doctor of the Straw Hat Pirates. Evolution is estimated to have 7,000 evolution points. Do you want to start evolution? Evolution. The comprehensive evolution of physical fitness begins, and the estimated time is 5 days. The full evolution of Conqueror's Haki begins, and the evolution is complete. Devil Fruit's ability evolution begins, ability evolution development, estimated time, 3 days. 7,000 points. Less than Sanji's. Luffy looked at the disappearing evolution points and counted. Perhaps it's a matter of potential. In terms of ability alone, the potential of demon fruit power is higher than that of ordinary people, but if some talents are included, such as physical skills, sword skills, etc., then the final evolution, the upper limit, is completely different. Moreover, it may also be related to the basic quality of the person being evolved. Chopper's basic strength is too poor, so evolution is just raising the limit of Tao at this level. Rayleigh analyzed. Perhaps after you really adapt to this evolution, there may be another evolution. Rayleigh said so, but he felt in his heart that there was a high probability that it was impossible. Raising a person to a level close to the Admiral level, or directly to the Admiral level, is already a fantasy-like ability. One must know that in this sea, there are many talented young people who will not be able to reach the Admiral level of combat power in their entire lives. There are so many lives in this sea, so many races, and there are only a few people who really stand at the top of the sea. Soon, the evolution of Chopper was completed. His size subconsciously swelled to a human form, like a huge orangutan. A ray of light flashed from his eyes. Rayleigh was on the sidelines, a look of wonder in his eyes. This ability is really miraculous. Chopper, who felt very weak to him just now, is now somewhat strengthened by the naked eye. This kind of courage, even in New World, is definitely among the strong. Moreover, this has not completely evolved. After strengthening his physical fitness and ability, his strength will be greatly improved. It's amazing, this feeling. Chopper clenched his fists hard, a completely different feeling lingered in his heart. The strength of the body has obviously not improved much, but the control has increased by more than a little bit, as if it is only today that the body has been completely controlled. The perception of the color of knowledge, the hardening of the color of the armed, the improvement of the courage of the conquerors. Give him a feeling of being reborn. Only now can he specifically feel why Luffy, Zoro, Sanji and the others were able to behave so indifferently and calmly in the face of such a dangerous situation when they were in Sabaody. Because at this level, the confidence brought by strength is really too strong. Congratulations, Chopper, Usopp said enviously from the side. From today onwards, you are also as strong as Luffy and the others. Although there are almost no external changes, even Usopp can clearly feel the aura exuding from Chopper, which is very similar to Luffy and the others. Belongs to the temperament of the strong. What a strong man, you bastard, I'd be ashamed to praise me like that, Usopp. Chopper immediately returned from the strong man form to the normal civet cat-like form. His face was excited, and his small arms were bent and waved like noodles. When you're ready, you can go. Rayleigh spoke from the deck. And at this time, a large number of murlocs and mermaids appeared inexplicably in the entire port. At the end of the road where the mermaid and the murloc spread out, there was a tall murloc wearing seastone handcuffs. Boss Jinbei, why don't you resist? Don't try to take Boss Jinbei from the Fishman Island. The murlocs were in a turbulent mood. And Luffy on the sunny just looked there curiously. Who is that guy? Haisha Jinbei is also a super famous big shot, just like Shang, Crocodile, and Moria, he is a Shichibukai. Frankie raised his sunglasses, looked over there and said. Jinbei. Rayleigh also saw the scene over there, and said clearly. Does Uncle Rayleigh know him too? Luffy asked curiously. Ah, I had a lot of connections with the Sun Pirates he was in before. Fisher Tiger boarded the Holy Land Mariajoy to emancipate the slaves. I once helped some of the escaped slaves return home. A look of nostalgia appeared in Rayleigh's eyes. It's a pity for Fisher. Although Jinbei is stronger, it will eventually have to compromise in front of the world government. Why is Shichibukai handcuffed? Luffy asked a little puzzled. The one who escorted Jinbei, the Shichibukai, was only Vice Admiral, a member of Marine's headquarters. In terms of strength, he was not weak, but he was not good enough in front of Shichibukai. Jinbei, however, looked like he was being handcuffed willingly. I don't know, but it should be for the Fishman Island. Rayleigh said calmly. Ah, it's Xiao Ba. Luffy saw Xiao Ba in the crowd. He was talking to Jinbei, but was pushed to the ground by Marine who was escorting him. Seeing the escorting Marine raise the gun in his hand, Luffy's figure disappeared on the deck in an instant. You guys. Jinbei saw that the Marine soldier raised his hand, the palm was slightly exerted, water droplets rolled on the palm, and he was about to strike. And someone shot faster than him. Don't hurt my partner. Boom. A figure surrounded by white steam instantly appeared in front of Xiao Ba. The moment he landed, the terrifying conquerors spread out like a violent shock wave. Several Marine soldiers who raised their guns rolled their eyes and passed out instantly. Luffy's control over conquerors is getting stronger, and he can easily hit the target with precision. This boldness. Jinbei's cloak was blown backwards by the powerful air waves. He squinted his eyes and looked at Luffy standing in front of Xiaoba in surprise. Straw Hat Kid. The headquarters vice admiral leading the team is Huo Shaoshan, a vice admiral headquarters with very old qualifications and strong strength. However, at this moment, he was standing where he was, with cold sweat streaming down his face, and he didn't step forward. The headquarters just sent him a message, because Straw Hat Boy and Pluton Rayleigh, driving the pirate ship of One Piece Luogia, the Oro Jackson, dived into the sea. It is very likely that he is headed towards the Fishman Island, so let him who is in charge of forcibly summoning Shichibukai Jinbei on the Fishman Island pay close attention. And, in order to raise his vigilance, he even told him the top secret news that Admiral Kizaru was defeated by the Straw Hat Boy, which is currently blocked. At this moment, facing the Straw Hat Boy, how dare he move? An admiral-level fighter, and, not far away, there is Pluton Rayleigh watching from the shadows. Not to mention his headquarters vice admiral, even if an admiral is here, he would not dare to act rashly. Chapter 45. Jinbei boards the ship. Advertise here. Luffy, that's great, save boss Jinbei. Xiaoba shouted loudly at Luffy. In order not to participate in the compulsory summons for the execution of Fire Fist Ace, he will be captured in Emperor prison. Ace. Luffy's face was originally calm, but when he heard Xiaoba's words, his face changed instantly. As for Huo Shaoshan, he instantly felt a powerful and terrifying aura, which instantly pressed down on him, like a high mountain. This boldness is indeed admiral-level pressure. Huo Shaoshan, as the elite vice admiral of the headquarters, naturally cannot be overwhelmed by pure courage. But the heavy pressure still made his heart sink. I took this person away, Luffy said to Marine flatly, and left directly with Jinbei. Hey, wait, I haven't said I'm leaving with you, kid. Jinbei's expression darkened, and he said in a low voice. He can't stand against the world government, because behind him stands the Fishman Island. The Fishman Island wants to have legal rights. He, Shichibukai, cannot fall out with the world government. This is why, as a member of the Sun Pirates who liberated slaves, he bowed his head to the world government and became Shichibukai. And the same is true for the mandatory summoning of Shichibukai this time. He was unable to participate in the execution of Ace of the Fire Fist, so he was only able to be arrested and sent to Emperor's prison to serve his sentence. This is his choice. However, Luffy has always been a carefree character who doesn't like to listen to explanations. His actions are faster than his brain. Jinbei didn't finish his sentence. One of Luffy's hands had already grasped the cloak behind him, and the other hand extended quickly, directly grabbing the railing of the Oro Jackson. Let's go, Hexia Jinbei. Luffy shouted loudly, and his whole body shot out like a rocket in an instant. Hey, wait a minute. Jinbei still wanted to resist, and his legs exerted a little force. However, Luffy's strength at this moment is already very strong, plus the strength brought by the shrinkage of the rubber. The cloak was straightened in an instant, and Jinbei froze for a moment, and then he was pulled into the air by a huge force, making a deep cry in the air. It's Luffy's style. Xiao Ba smiled, and then quietly got into the crowd. This is the Fishman Island 10,000 meters deep in the sea, and even if Marine is angry, it is impossible to catch him. Aren't we going to move? Huo Shaoshan Vice Admiral. A Marine soldier reminded, and Huo Shaoshan just looked at the soldier coldly, and said indifferently, what are you chasing? Notify the headquarters, saying that the Straw Hat Boy has indeed come to the Fishman Island, snatched Hexia Jinbei, and is expected to go to New World. After the soldiers left, Huo Shaoshan breathed a sigh of relief, and then said in a low voice, Straw Hat Kid, what a terrible oppressive force. The Fishman Island port, on a high ground. The huge Neptune looked towards the port with nostalgic eyes. Oro Jackson, long time no see. The pirate ship of the Luogia pirates still remembers when they boarded the Fishman Island for the first time. Neptune originally thought that man could change the world. In a sense, it did change the world, but not in the way Neptune imagined. It stands to reason that Neptune should hate Luogia, because the era of great pirates he started made the situation of the Fishman Island very dangerous. There are many more vicious pirates than before the era of great pirates. However, from the perspective of a friend, Neptune also admires Luogia, and he has opened up a truly great era. Let's go, there shouldn't be many problems with Jinbei. Neptune turned around. The sons behind him followed in turn. He went to New World this time. At this point in time, Rayleigh should be going to Newgate. If they can join forces, Newgate can also relax a little bit. On the way back, Neptune thought to himself. His relationship with Whitebeard was closer than that of Luogia, so he naturally didn't want Whitebeard to have an accident. In this war, the more help Whitebeard has, the better. The sea outside the Fishman Island. On the deck of the Oro Jackson. You kid. Jinbei's face was full of anger. Then when he saw Rayleigh next to Luffy, his anger suddenly subsided and he said in surprise. Mr. Rayleigh. Ah, long time no see. Jinbei, why are you tied up this time? Rayleigh greeted. Because I refused the government's mandatory summoning of Shichibukai, I am unwilling to take action against Brother Ace, which is the way of chivalry I practice. Jinbei said calmly. Daddy is kind to me and to the Fishman Island. Brother Ace is my friend. No matter from that aspect, I should not make a move. I would rather go to Impel. The sonorous and forceful words made everyone present have a good impression of the tall and strong Murloc in front of them. In this era, people who practice benevolence and righteousness are too rare. People like Jinbei would rather give up resistance than go to impel. Speaking of which, why is Mr. Rayleigh here? Jinbei said with some doubts. He remembered that Rayleigh had completely retired. If it weren't for the shocking event that Fisher's brother did at the beginning, Rayleigh would not have made a move. I'm also here for the Fire Fist Ace, but I'm just a guide. Luffy is Ace's younger brother. I'm going to take him to Whitebeard to discuss how to save Ace. Rayleigh laughed. Brother Ace's younger brother. I seem to have heard him say it. Jinbei looked at Luffy at the side, and the anger that was forcibly brought in his eyes dissipated a little, and instead there was a look of appreciation. Since he is Brother Ace's younger brother, he is also my friend. Jinbei, who runs through the path of chivalry, appreciates Luffy's courage to face the world government and rescue Ace. Hey, Jinbei, you are very interesting, do you want to be my partner? Luffy looked at Jinbei with a smile, and said abruptly. Hey, you're too casual, Luffy. Nami and the others looked surprised. What an annoying guy. Zoro sighed and couldn't help covering his forehead. Ha ha ha, I already have a boat to carry me, and I won't be off the boat for a short time. I'm sorry, Brother Luffy, but go find Dad and rescue Ace. I will do my best to help you. Jinbei laughed boldly. Behind him is the Sun Pirates left by Big Brother Tiger. And it's just meeting Luffy for the first time. Although it's very appetizing, it's not easy to get on the boat. Hey, that's really a pity. Between talking and laughing, the Oro Jackson was in the deep sea, passing through the big hole under the red line, and officially headed for New World. Chapter 46 Arrival, Moby Dick. Advertise here. New World. A marine warship is sailing in the sea, which is also the recruit training ship of Marine. Teacher Zephyr, there is a call from the headquarters. Ion, wearing Marine's white cloak, handed Zephyr a phone bug. I'm Zephyr. With a piece of wood in his mouth, Zephyr said in a deep voice. After a while, he hung up the phone bug with a strange expression on his face. Sengoku let me go back. Teacher, why? We have always moved freely. Ain was a little puzzled. Because the former Shichibukai attacked the recruit training ship, and the family members were attacked and killed by pirates, the headquarters did not protect well, so the headquarters has always owed Zephyr. Add to that Zephyr's prestigious connections within Marine. He simply pulled a warship by himself and hunted pirates everywhere. Headquarters has always turned a blind eye. Anyway, they are catching pirates and going with Zephyr. In general, tasks are not delegated to Zephyr. The Oro Jackson appeared, and Sengoku thought that the remnants of Luogia might join the war, so all forces must be summoned back. Zephyr said lightly. The situation has become so serious. Ain, inform everyone, return to the headquarters. Is teacher. Not just Zephyr. The Marine's high-end combat power outside. Substitutes Admiral, Momosuke, and T-Pig are all being called up urgently. It can be said that this time, except for those Marine branch bases that are stable at the forefront, all the combat power that can be mobilized by Marine has been mobilized back. It is to deal with the next war. It can be said that Marine is now and ready to go to war with the Whitebeard pirates and the remnants of Luogia at the same time. Although the sea is at sea, many people have noticed that the strength of Marine's recruitment of combat power is abnormal. But because the appearance of the Oro Jackson was only a glimpse, and the war process on the Sabaody archipelago was completely blocked by the world government. So much so that, in the current sea, except for Marine, no one else knows what is about to happen. 2 days later, an ordinary sea area in New World. The climate is mild and calm, and it doesn't look like New World climate conditions at all. The red Oro Jackson sails the seas. Rayleigh holds a life card in his hand. This is Whitebeard's life card left by the Luogia pirates when he was young. Is this really New World? It feels so peaceful along the way. Nami sat on the deck of the Oro Jackson, wondering. This sea area not only has a mild climate and calm seas, but even some of the islands passing by along the way do not seem to have much fighting. Because this is Dad's territory. Jinbei smiled and said, New World has the order of New World. The order here is not Marine, world government, but Marine, New World countries, most of them are under the shelter of pirates. Of course, those countries are not recognized by the world government. 4 emperors, you can actually think of them as the 4 emperors of the New World. At this level, almost everyone has a part of the island or country under their command. Oh, that's true. Nami didn't know what to say, she was a little shocked. I didn't expect the pirates to be able to do this. Each one is equivalent to the king of a large country. She was born in a small village on an island. Dad's character towards civilians is the best among the 4 emperors. If the countries and islands you see do not have Dad's protection, they will soon be destroyed by pirates and human traffickers. Including the Fishman Island where I am, Dad's flag also deters every pirate who comes and goes. Jinbei said with admiration. A pirate like him who implements the chivalrous way, the one he admires the most is a person like Whitebeard. Among the 4 emperors, the redhead is the most free and likes to sail, Kaido occupies Wanokuni, and Bigmom likes to absorb various races and transform the people of its islands. Only Whitebeard, what he does is actually equivalent to the world government that does not accept the gold in the sky. This is what Jinbei admires the most. The world government likes to promote Dad as a criminal. In fact, in Dad's territory, the people here regard him as a god and are grateful and love him. Jinbei said. In comparison, celestial dragons have destroyed many more kingdoms than pirates. This world is not black and white, and you will know it after you have seen it a lot. Rayleigh said lightly from the side. However, no matter what you do, just stick to your own heart. The world government and the four emperors are nothing more than large interest groups, but the power of the government is greater, so in the first half of the Four Seas and the Grand Line, their influence is even greater. Rayleigh knew very well how cruel the government was to the kingdoms that couldn't pay the heavenly money, and those countries that were not members of the world government. Whether the whole world is righteous or evil, it's just a means for the superiors to manipulate the world, so they, this group of people, are trying their best to sail and search for the essence of freedom. Of course, this is just the conclusion drawn by his old fellow. Everyone has a different perception of the world, even after seeing the same experience and the same thing. Whether it's the government or the four emperors, I just want to be the freest person on the sea. If anyone stands in my way, I'll beat him up. Luffy waved his fist and said with a smile, One Piece, you won't be restricted by world government and four emperors. Ha ha ha, it's really your style, Luffy. Rayleigh couldn't help laughing. Luffy's words always give him a feeling of Luogia from time to time. Zoro was on the other side. He heard what was said here, but he didn't express his opinion, just closed his eyes, held the knife in both hands, and danced slowly. He is adjusting his state. Four Emperors Whitebeard, definitely not as easy to talk to as Jinbei and Rayleigh said. Compared with each other, their names are far worse. Only when they show enough strength can they gain an equal right to speak. Call. A moment later, Zoro opened his eyes, and the invisible sharpness spread. He felt himself getting stronger and stronger. 3.5 days have passed since his evolution, and his physique has been strengthened by half. The strengthening of the physique, the haki it brings, and the overall strengthening of the perception. Also at this time, Rayleigh looked in the direction of the life card, and saw a huge whale-like ship lying across the sea. The outline of the huge ship can be clearly seen from a long distance. I found it, the main ship of the Whitebeard pirates, the Moby Dick. Chapter 47 Whitebeard's Attitude. Advertise here. Moby Dick aboard. Whitebeard was sitting on a huge chair. Dad, here they come, with Rayleigh and Jinbei on it, and Ace's brother, the Straw Hat. A pirate looks through a telescope at the approaching Oro Jackson in the distance. In fact, they had been spotted the day before when the Oro Jackson came to Whitebeard's domain. You know, because of the Ace thing. The nearest Whitebeard territory is very powerful. If it is an unfamiliar ship, it will be stopped directly when it enters the territory. It won't be so easy to get here on the Moby Dick. Is it finally here? Whitebeard opened his eyes, a flash of light flashed by, his voice was low and full of majesty. Interesting, this Rayleigh guy actually got involved, not for Ace, but for the Straw Hat Boys, and for a newcomer, he took out the Oro Jackson. I'd like to see what kind of power Ace's younger brother has to make that old fellow Rayleigh make such a sacrifice. Whitebeard wonders if Rayleigh knows Ace's true identity. There is a high probability that he does not know, and even he guessed it. After the Luogia pirates were disbanded, with Luogia's character, he would never entrust this matter to any partner. On the contrary, Garp is the character of Luogia. To be honest, only Garp can save Luogia's child. The identities of others, including Rayleigh, are too sensitive. Plus, even if he knew, Whitebeard doesn't think Rayleigh would go for the Ace. As Luogia's deputy, he is also Luogia's most trusted person. He is definitely not retiring so simply, he has a more important mission. What is he waiting for? The inheritor of Luogia's will. Or someone more important, that is the person Luogia has been waiting for. Luogia, Whitebeard muttered under his breath. He closed his eyes slightly, and seemed to see the last drink between him and Luogia under the sakura tree. Hey, Newgate, I'm dying. Luogia said with a smile on his face, without any fear of death, it was as natural as drinking. How much longer? Whitebeard said calmly, frowning, down a large bowl of wine in one gulp. I don't know, it should be about a year. Hello, Newgate, do you know my real name? Isn't it Gold Luogia? No, that's what the world government called to hide a certain truth. My real name is Galdi Luogias, ha ha ha. Indeed, on the way of traveling, I occasionally meet a few people with a strange D in their name. What is D? Luogia, you should know. Ah, of course I know. We have reached the final island and know everything about this world. Do you want to know? Newgate, I can give you the location of the final island. I'm not interested in that kind of thing, I just want my family. Whitebeard said flatly. That's the kind of person you are. It's really boring. You guy, Newgate, is obviously the one who can change the world, but it's okay to tell you. In the future, there will be a person named D, who will start a huge war that will sweep the entire world and completely change the world. Haha, unfortunately, I can't wait. Hey, Luogia, hey, are you drunk? Whitebeard looked at Luogia who was lying on the grass soundly asleep with a headache. Memories are always beautiful, as if they are naturally wearing a filter. Is he the one you were waiting for? Luogia. Whitebeard opened his eyes, full of memories and sentimentality, and at this time, his expression would become very soft. Father. Marco next to him said with concern. I'm fine, I just recalled something. Whitebeard said flatly. Marco, Jazzy, don't think of the Straw Hat Boy as Ace's younger brother for a while, understand? Whitebeard's eyes widened suddenly, his momentum swept past like a tornado, and he spoke majestically. Father. Marco froze for a moment, but immediately understood what Whitebeard was thinking. Dad is going to test the courage of Ace's younger brother. I want to see if he is really qualified to come to me on the Oro Jackson. Whitebeard said lightly, do you still remember what you did when you faced Luogia and the others? Hey, Dad, Ace's younger brother is a rookie after all, that's too much. Marco scratched his head, a little distressed. Just do it. Whitebeard closed his eyes and meditated, and said calmly. Got it, Dad. Marco, Foil, and Diamond looked at each other and responded. Since the father had spoken, they had to follow suit. We can only hope that Ace's younger brother is strong and won't be so embarrassed. And on the other side, Rayleigh is also telling Luffy them. I am too familiar with that old guy Whitebeard. He is majestic, stubborn, and arrogant. He is old and stubborn. However, what he likes the most is a young man with potential and strength. You don't have to keep your hands, just come as you are arrogant. Rayleigh laughed. Jinbei, who was on the side, felt slightly offended and said, Mr. Rayleigh, Dad has a very good personality. Not bad. He is only good to his own people he recognizes. Haven't you seen how he attacks the enemy? Rayleigh snorted with a smile, and continued to say to Luffy, Zoro and the others, don't think about it, he will definitely test you in a while. The so-called test is to test your strength and courage, and it will be more oppressive than the normal test, because you are here on the Oro Jackson. Even, he will deal with you according to the state he once met with us. The gesture of meeting the Luogia pirates. What kind of gesture is that? Asked Nami. She couldn't imagine what it would be like to meet two pirates who were both legendary. Of course there was a fight. Rayleigh narrowed his eyes and smiled, as if recalling the battle with the Whitebeard pirates when he was young, the terrifying fighting spirit lingered around him. So, if you boarded the ship with the idea of friendly communication from the beginning, then you will suffer a big loss immediately. Rayleigh said as if he was afraid that the world would not be chaotic. Let's fight, let's cut, show your strength, the stronger the better, it's best to defeat that old guy Whitebeard directly, then the next thing will be very easy to talk about. A fighting mentality, it's exactly what I want. Zoro grinned, and held his hand directly on the autumn water at his waist, with his thumb against the knife jaw. I see. Luffy pressed the hat on his head, his eyes became sharper. Chapter 48 Boarding, Luffy's Resignation. Advertise here. Luffy puts on a straw hat. Zoro pressed the long knife. Sanji lit a cigarette. Chopper transformed into a burly humanoid. Luffy is at the front, Zoro and Sanji are behind him, and Chopper is at the back. The Oro Jackson approaches the Moby Dick, and a flight of stairs is lowered from the Moby Dick to connect to the Oro Jackson. Luffy took the lead, heading towards the Moby Dick. You don't have to go, the next collision is not something you can bear. Rayleigh sat on the rail of the Oro Jackson, holding a silver flagon, his head slightly bowed, the light reflected in his glasses. His tone was calm. There was a slight smile on his face, but the gentle temperament on his body became extremely sharp. It seems that what appeared in front of everyone at this moment was not the coder Uncle Rayleigh on the Sabaody archipelago, but the real legendary pirate, Pluton Rayleigh. You don't need to go to Jinbei either, this is a negotiation between us and Whitebeard. Rayleigh said calmly, stopping Jinbei who was about to go up together. But, Mr. Rayleigh, if I'm around, Dad might be a little less aggressive. Jinbei said anxiously, of course he understood Whitebeard's stubbornness and arrogance when facing the unfamiliar junior. Coupled with Rayleigh's arch fire just now, the Straw Hat Boy boarded the Moby Dick with a very high attitude, which may arouse the dissatisfaction of the old man. If he goes up, the situation will not deteriorate so much. No need, Luffy and the others are much stronger than you imagined, after all, he is the man who inherited that hat. Rayleigh lowered his head slightly and said calmly. After speaking, he didn't go to see Jinbei again. Instead, he set his eyes on Luffy's back, and said in a faint voice, don't let me down, Luffy. Your era begins today. Boom. The sound of crisp wooden mop on the wooden stairs. Boom. With the sound of footsteps, the unparalleled vigor spread to the surroundings. The terrifying conqueror's Haki, like a black and red tide, spread towards the surroundings, as if it had dyed the whole world into Shira's purgatory. An indescribable sense of oppression lingered in everyone's heart instantly. What a powerful spirit, this is Brother Luffy's conquerors. Jinbei stood on the deck of the Oro Jackson, looking in shock at Luffy who released a terrifying aura. This Brother Luffy, who is careless these days and looks like a rough-headed idiot, is like a king over the sea at this moment. Boom. Another step down. Obviously not much strength was used, but the wooden stairs creaked, as if they were overwhelmed. The invisible storm spread. Bang bang bang. It wasn't the sound of Luffy stomping, but the crackling of wooden hulls throughout the Moby Dick. The deck seemed to be swept by an invisible sharp blade, and there was a slight explosion, and then a series of wooden spikes exploded, and the railings on the edge suddenly expanded outwards, on the verge of breaking. What is this? On the Moby Dick, a pirate made a difficult sound, and then fell to the ground with white eyes in the next moment. How is it the same as when the redhead came last time? It's Conquerors. Someone exclaimed, but in the next moment, he also fell into a coma. Hey, isn't this Rayleigh's breath, Ace's brother? Isn't that the king of the sea coming? Marco sat on the railing, his face slightly ugly, and he managed to keep calm, but his heart was full of shock. This kind of courage is not much worse than when the red-haired boarded the ship before, it's almost like a real overlord descending. Even when the red hair came last time, he wasn't so shocked. After all, I was mentally prepared for that time, but this time I was completely holding the mentality of abusing food, or trying to keep my hand from Ace's younger brother, but the other party came to a big blow. The newcomers hid on the deck, this is no longer a level you can bear. Diamond Joe's yelled. If it was said that he couldn't let go of the treatment of the Luogia pirates that he said to his father before, he has completely entered the state now. They're the Whitebeard pirates, after all. How could he be frightened by a young pirate, even if he is Ace's younger brother? HMPH, interesting kid, not bad spirit. Although Whitebeard was obviously taken aback, he quickly calmed down and gave a cold snort of disdain. Boom. Another violent momentum swept across like a shock wave, and the entire huge Moby Dick began to shake slightly at this moment. Black clouds surged in the sky, covering the sun, and the surrounding sea fluctuated slightly, as if some giant beast was about to appear. At this moment, on the Moby Dick, apart from the old man, some newcomers have either fallen down or been pushed into the cabin. Coming. Marco said lightly. A blue flame emerged from his body. A bright light appeared on the body of Diamond Joe's next to him. Foil gently stroked his beard, and then drew out two long knives. Pedal. Finally, I walked up the stairs. Luffy is already on the deck of the Moby Dick. You're Whitebeard, I'm Monkey D. Luffy. Luffy pressed the straw hat on his head with one hand, lowered his head slightly, and looked up at the tall man sitting on the huge chair on the other side of the deck. The man is more than 6 meters tall, surprisingly tall and strong. Wearing a white cloak, revealing the strong muscles of the entire upper body, the muscles are full of scars, that is a man's metal. The most obvious thing is the white crescent-like beard under his nose. The man looked a little old, but even if he was old and had a drip on his body, just sitting there gave people an unimaginable sense of oppression. Luffy didn't feel this pressure on Kizaru. Uncle Rayleigh said you could help get Ace out, I want to talk to you. Luffy said in a deep voice. Little devil, I will take action on Ace's affairs, let's forget about the things we talked about, you little brat, just follow behind and contribute. The frontal fighting battlefield is not something that brats like you can get in touch with. Whitebeard sat on the huge chair, propped his cheek with one hand, and looked sideways at Luffy, with an absolute, irrefutable Haki in his bold voice. However, if you want to talk, you can come to me and I will talk to you. Whitebeard looked calm, looking at Luffy in front of him with interest. It's like looking at a pure junior. Strange uncle, it's just a matter of walking in front of you. After Luffy finished speaking, he raised his foot and walked forward. Boom, as if the sound of burning flames sounded, a blue figure appeared in front of Luffy in an instant. Chapter 49 Monsters of the Straw Hat Pirates. Advertise here. Ace's younger brother, let you walk in front of dad like this, then we are too shameless. Marco was aflame with relief. Between the waving of the arms, huge wings appeared out of thin air, and for a moment, it seemed that a legendary creature took off in front of him. Huge claws, stomping on Luffy's head. The air was cut open, making a whirring sound, cyan flames wrapped around his claws, and an invisible spirit condensed on the claws. Phoenix Seal. As for Luffy, it was as if he didn't see it at all, without any movement, and continued to walk forward. Double knife style, Yingbo. When the burning claws of Qingyun were about to step on Luffy's head. In the slanted ground, a bright sword wave came from the air. Boom. The cyan flame collided with the sword wave. The flames and sword waves sputtered all around like fragments. The invisible shock wave swept past like a storm, blowing Luffy's clothes rattling. However, Luffy's expression didn't change at all, he just looked at Whitebeard in front of him, and walked forward firmly. By his side, there is a reliable partner who will not allow him to be disturbed in the process. Clang. Jonbo and the blue flame dispersed. The claws like birds and beasts collided with the sharp black knife, making a sound of gold and iron. King against king. General against general, how could you interfere with our king? Zoro grinned while biting the word, Hidao, in his mouth. You are. Marco was a little surprised, he looked at Zoro who stood in front of him. He could clearly feel the tremendous power coming from this man's black knife, as well as the sense of oppression emerging from him. The sense of oppression like Admiral, although not as strong as Admiral, is already very close. To be honest, he doesn't know much about the Straw Hat Pirates, a pirate group that has been at sea for less than a year. It's just because of Ace that I know something about the newcomer Straw Hat. But what people didn't expect was that Ace's younger brother not only has the terrifying Conqueror's Haki, but even one of his subordinates has such a strong strength. It's not like a pirate facing a rookie pirate group. It's like facing the second in command of those 4 Emperor's pirates. No, stronger and more oppressive than the second in command of those 4 Emperor's pirates. Straw Hat Pirates, Roronoa Zoro. Zoro bit his knife and smiled, what about you? It's really hard to chop. Are you the second in command of the Whitebeard Pirates? Whitebeard Pirates Captain, Marco. Marco showed a gentle smile, and then the blue flames all over his body rose suddenly, and his strength instantly increased several times. 1 strength force, 2 strength force, 2 strength cut. The muscles in Zoro's arms suddenly bulged, like 2 balloons. He crossed his swords, and then exerted force. A fork-shaped sword wave emerged in the air, and the terrifying power made the air around his body tremble. Marco was directly impacted by a strong force, and then waved his blue flame wings, dexterously unloading the force in the air. The kid with the knife is very strong, and he's on par with Marco. When Zoro appeared, Whitebeard stared and couldn't help admiring. He is very aware of Marco's strength. Although Marco's fruit ability can't provide much bonus to his own strength, but physical skills, Haki, Marco has honed to an ultimate. What he's really missing is a Conqueror's entanglement. If he can learn Conqueror's entanglement, Marco will be a solid admiral-level combat power. Strength, speed, resilience, he has it all. In a real match against Admiral, he will be able to stay steady. However, such a strong man was actually stopped by an unknown kid of the Straw Hat Pirates, and the strength and courage were really surprising. Roronoa Zoro. It's an interesting kid to be able to convince such a man. Straw Hat Boy, no wonder. Rayleigh will regard you as the one Luogia is waiting for, and even lend you the Oro Jackson. Whitebeard looked at Luffy, who walked forward with firm eyes. In fact, he has completely approved of Luffy, and even fell in love with this brat. The powerful Conqueror's Haki, the fearless spirit, and the powerful strength shown by Zoro now make Whitebeard recognize it very much. But he didn't say it. He could feel that now was not the limit of this brat. He wanted to see how far this man whom Rayleigh had placed high hopes on could go. Joes, Vista, you two go up and try his limit. Whitebeard laughed. Yes, father. A shining light emerged from Jaws's body. It was obviously a huge body, but it disappeared in an instant, and then appeared on the side of Luffy as if passing through space. Don't try to mess with Luffy. Rambo ball, strengthening the wrist. Chopper gently tossed a blue wave ball, and then crushed it. Terrifying muscles began to bulge from his arms. The tyrannical armament Haki hangs over his hands. Carved hooves, colorful fallen flowers. The deer hooves attached to the tyrannical armament Haki instantly exploded the air. For a moment, countless deer shoe-shaped air waves wrapped around Chopper's hand like falling sakura fluttering, and hit Joe's. Chopper's evolution is not long, and he is at a disadvantage in wrist strength. He growled. Relying on the strength of the blue wave ball and the excellent armed color, the speed of the diamond is abruptly reduced. Boom. Accompanied by the last dull sound. Chopper's feet were fully inserted into the deck, drawing a trail across the deck. However, Jaws's charge was also abruptly stopped. This guy. Joes looked at him with a smile in front of him, resembling the Chopper of the Fur tribe. His eyes were full of surprise. With his strength and ability, he charged, but was restrained by force, and he was just a member of the Straw Hat Pirates. Moreover, the attainment of that armed color is definitely the highest level. Even Jaws's diamond body felt obvious pain when hit by the opponent's armed force. A single Roronoa is surprising enough. Why, there is actually a strong man who is not inferior to him in the slightest. Straw Hat Pirates, what the hell is going on? Didn't Ace say that his younger brother only went to sea for a year? After going to sea for a year, can you gather so many terrifying monsters? Chapter 50 I am Whitebeard. Advertise here. Really, one by one knows how to rush forward. Now the only one who is still walking behind Luffy is Sanji. As he walked, Sanji raised his hand to cover the sea breeze, and lightly lit a cigarette for himself. Then the figure disappeared instantly. Clang. A crisp sound sounded. The black leather shoe kicked at the intersection of the two long knives. Boom. A muscular figure was instantly kicked out, drawing a long trace on the deck. Have you left me another stinky swordsman? Phew. Sanji breathed out the smoke lightly, put his hands in his pockets, and there was a slight sound of air explosion under his feet, and he just stepped on the air, looking calmly at the man with the mustache in the distance. It's heavy feet. Vista stood up straight with a smile on his face, staring intently at Sanji in the air, and praised with a smile like a gentleman. Even he couldn't underestimate the power just now. Straw Hat Pirates, Chef Sanji. Sanji pulled one hand out of his pocket, took out the cigarette, and slightly tilted his head to the side and exhaled a mouthful of cigarette smoke. Can you leave our captain alone? The meeting between the king, and others, don't interfere. Interesting. One by one, a rookie pirate group, it is really surprising that there is a man like you. Vista smiled and said. However, we are under 4 Emperors Whitebeard. Whitebeard Pirates, captain of the 5th Division, Vista. Elegant as a dueling noble swordsman, Vista stroked his mustache, and then disappeared instantly. Dang dang. Invisible shocks erupted in the air, and spherical transparent shock waves exploded in the air, but no one could be seen. A moment later, flowing fire like molten iron, mixed with sword waves, fell from the air, showing the fierceness of the battle between the two sides. This is Ace's younger brother's pirate group. How do you gather so many young monsters? The remaining members of the Whitebeard Pirates present did not make a move. After all, there were only 4 members of the Straw Hat Pirates. They were just probing, not for revenge. They were too proud to be able to do things like besiege. If so, they are enough to be shocked by the strength of the Straw Hat Pirates. You know, the 3 captains who went up, but among them, the 3 captains are now the strongest. Marco, Beasta, and Joes are the oldest and strongest group of people. Even if it is placed in New World, it is also a well-known big shot. As a result, at this moment, the 3 of them shot, but they were easily blocked by the 3 crew members of the Straw Hat Pirates. The swordsman named Roranoa was able to block Marco, whose strength was close to that of the 4 emperors. That moose was on par with Diamond Jazzy. And the man who claimed to be a chef actually slightly suppressed Vista, who was a great swordsman. And this is just a member of the pirate group who has been at sea for less than a year, and they are all a group of young people who seem to be around 20 years old. Young and immature and scary, but powerful and terrifying like a monster. Hey, are the newbies this scary now? Captain Yufin couldn't help but speak. They wonder if they've been in New World too long. The outside world has changed. Newcomers who have been at sea for a year can have an equal share with the Whitebeard pirates. The crew is already so powerful, so what kind of character is their captain to be able to take these monsters under his command? Completely subdue them. A terrible thought flashed in everyone's mind, and they looked at the huge man with a calm face, sharp eyes, and terrifying momentum. At this moment, he is walking step by step towards the strongest man in the world. The strongest man in the world, Whitebeard stands tall in front, and the huge chair looks like a king's chair. However, Luffy is not like a courtier meeting the king. At this moment, it is more like a meeting between 2 kings. Funny kid. Whitebeard's eyes softened, but there was still a slight disdainful, condescending smile on his face. Pedal. With the last foot down. It was like a dull sound hitting everyone's heart, causing everyone's heart to miss a beat at this moment. The invisible air wave passed by like a storm. I'm here, can we talk? Luffy gently took off the straw hat in his hand, raised his head slightly, looked at the extremely tall Whitebeard with sharp and firm eyes, and said lightly. What do you want to talk about, kid? Whitebeard was condescending, with faint traces of silver-white light appearing in his pupils, and the terrifying aura fell on Luffy like a heavenly collapse. Use your strength to help me block those marine soldiers, General, I will go and save Ace. Luffy's mind flashed back to what Rayleigh had said to him. Luffy, you have to remember that you have to be tough and put yourself in a dominant position. When facing Whitebeard, your tone must not be negotiable and decisive. If you want to rescue Ace, a few people are definitely not enough. Whitebeard is the 4 emperors. He has a large number of troops under his command, and he himself has great strength. If you persuade him to help you, then the chances of rescuing Ace are very high. Rayleigh had a meaningful smile on his face as he said these words. But Luffy didn't care. Rayleigh had helped them a lot and wouldn't hurt him in this matter. Gu la la la. But Whitebeard's loud laugh responded to Luffy's tough words. It's been a long time since I saw such a brave brat. The heroic laughter, accompanied by the terrifying courage, almost made everyone around feel suffocated. The unparalleled oppressive force seemed to freeze the surrounding air completely. Even the 2 sides fighting not far away couldn't help but stop at this moment. Father is a little angry. Marco retracted his flame wings and landed on the railing, looking at Whitebeard who was laughing not far away, and said in surprise. Is this the oppressive power of the strongest man in the world? It's really like a monster. Zoro bit the words of Hidao, a little shocked, but more of a fighting spirit. Are you ordering me just now? Boy. The heroic laughter stopped. Whitebeard was condescending, his pupils slightly downward, looking at Luffy below. In the pupils, the silver-white light marks became more and more obvious. Uncle Chi, don't you also want to rescue Ace? Then lend me your strength. Luffy put on the straw hat and said impatiently. He always felt that the weird uncle in front of him was dying. You brat, who do you think I am? I'm Whitebeard. Whitebeard roared, and the whole sea seemed to shake. He got up. The infusion tube and the bottle were ripped off, and a huge naginata was pulled out from the side by him, and with indescribable terror and strength, it slashed towards Luffy like a tsunami. Chapter 51 The Collision of the Old and the New Era. Advertise here. How terrifying is the knife of the strongest man in the world? Everyone present can clearly feel it at this moment. The sky collapsed and weighed on my heart, as if there was a tsunami that could destroy the entire world in front of my eyes. It was such a terrifying feeling, as if there was a voice in my ear constantly telling me that death was approaching. Although it is not the peak of his youth, but now Whitebeard is still terrifying. There was probably only one person present who did not feel the intense oppression. You've been chattering there since just now, uncle, you talk too much nonsense. Luffy roared. The terrifying black-red spirit spread like a hemispherical shock wave. Almost abruptly, the tsunami-like oppressive feeling was directly washed away. Then, facing the huge naginata with terrifying momentum, Luffy directly stepped on it. Boom. The terrifying shock wave, which was even bigger than the imposing collision just now, spread towards the surroundings like waves of waves. It was obviously an air wave, but it was like sea water, bringing a powerful impact and bringing a sense of suffocation to everyone present. There was no collision between the slippers and the naginata, as if there was an invisible space bubble blocking the 2 sides, but everyone knew that the 2 sides had already launched the most intense collision. This kind of visual and psychological distortion and error gives people an extremely shocking feeling. The black and red lightning distorted wantonly around the center point where the two sides collided, dissipated and emerged again. It's an air fight, exactly the same as when Dad used to fight Luo Jia. The old man of the Whitebeard pirates spoke in shock. It turned out to be Conqueror's winding. The Straw Hat Boy actually mastered Conqueror's winding. Marco's expression is complicated. He is also known as the strong man in the sea, but the one line of difference is the difference between heaven and earth. The final thread is the Conqueror's winding. The Conqueror's winding, also known as the symbol of the Four Emperors. Is it the sign of the Four Emperors? Zoro was thoughtful. The collision between the two sides is still going on. This is the top collision in the sea, and invisible ripples are rushing towards the surroundings. The sea surface around the Moby Dick began to fluctuate violently. Aboard the Oro Jackson, Nami suddenly looked up at the sky suspiciously. Why is the sky so dark suddenly? And the fluctuation of the sea surface is like a precursor to a storm, but there is no storm right now. Only Rayleigh had a meaningful smile on his face. Look at the sky, what is that? The sky is cracked. Usopp covered his head and looked at the sky in shock. At some point, the sky that had been covered by thick black clouds, at this moment, a huge crack appeared above their heads. That crack seemed to cut off the entire sky. Thick black clouds surged upward along the huge crack, and a faint light emerged from the crack, giving people an indescribable sense of mystery and shock. This is the celestial phenomenon produced by the collision of the Four Emperors level. Jinbei said with a serious face, "Who did Dad fight with?" After finishing speaking, Jinbei rushed directly towards the Moby Dick. And Rayleigh didn't move, he just looked at the sky wistfully, and then the look in his eyes was filled with excitement and anticipation. It's like a long-awaited dream has come true at this moment. It seemed like decades of waiting had finally come to fruition. This is the collision of the new era and the old era. Luo Jia, did you hear that? The wave of the new era is rolling in. Rayleigh tilted his head slightly, closed his eyes facing the sky, and there was a little sparkle in the corner of his eyes. At this moment, a picture appeared in front of him. Luo Jia, he was standing on the bow of the Oro Jackson, facing the black clouds and the turbulent sea, with a passionate smile on his face. The will inherited from generation to generation, the changes of the times, and the dreams of people, these are unstoppable. As long as people continue to seek answers to freedom, this will not stop. The sound seemed to come from the bow of the ship and into Rayleigh's ears. Straw Hat, he is the one we are waiting for. Rayleigh's heart has never been more determined than it is now. He has already heard the sound of the great era. Mr. Rayleigh. Robin looked at Rayleigh next to him suspiciously. Listen to the sound of the surging tide, the sound of the changing times, and the sound of the answer to people's pursuit of freedom. How wonderful it is. Rayleigh's deep voice, full of experience, seems to come from the legendary era, giving people a sense of ethereal illusion. The next moment, Rayleigh's figure disappeared on the Oro Jackson in an instant. On the deck of the Moby Dick, the terrifying air wave swept across like a wave. The center of the deck, the center of the collision, was no longer something ordinary people could see with their eyes. There are only bright lights and indescribable fluctuations. It's as if the space is shaking, vibrating, and then shattering like water waves. It's simply a collision like a monster. Marco's face was still calm, and his eyes were full of horror. It's not a dimensional power. Even Zoro couldn't help admiring, especially when he saw the huge broken chasm in the sky. Whether it's Four Emperors or Luffy, they are as strong as monsters. I didn't expect the Straw Hat Boy to be able to collide head-on with the old man without losing the wind. The captains of the Whitebeard pirates have grown their mouths at this moment, and their eyes are about to pop out of their sockets. Honestly, who is Whitebeard? That is recognized as the strongest man in the world, and this point is infinitely magnified in the Whitebeard pirates. Dad is like a god, possessing a mighty power unimaginable by all. Is the real monster of the sea. But now, someone actually confronted the old man head-on. What a monster. Boy, is it only this level. Gu la la la. Whitebeard laughed, and swung the huge naginata vigorously in his hand, each bursting out with the might of 1,000 riders. The invisible air wave condenses on the naginata, not a shock wave, but a conqueror's entanglement. As the strongest man in the world, Whitebeard not only developed the shock fruit ability to ultimate, but also his conqueror's Haki is also ridiculously strong. Although your mouth is a little broken, but your uncle is indeed very strong. Luffy has fully entered the fourth gear at this moment, with black and red armed muscles attached, wrapped around the powerful conqueror's Haki, and collided with Whitebeard without losing any wind. Every time, it was a huge explosion that seemed to tear apart the space. Boom. There was another collision, and the two sides were slightly separated. Whitebeard had an excited, approving grin on his face, while Luffy had a warlike look on his face. This form, it seems, is still a little bit worse. Luffy said with a smile, his body was shrinking, and his smile was getting bigger and bigger. Change gear, 5th gear. Chapter 52, 5th gear and shock. Advertise here. The voice fell with Luffy's words. Luffy's entire 4th gear, which is slightly larger than ordinary people's body, began to shrink. No, rather than shrinking, it is better to say it is assimilating, melting like a pool of water. Said after melting. Boom boom boom. Excited drums sounded from the melting Luffy body. His body emitted a gentle and not dazzling white light. Within the light, there were hearty laughter. Everyone who heard this laughter couldn't help showing a smile on their faces, as if they were completely infected by this laughter. What is this? Marco looked at the scene in front of him with some surprise. He couldn't understand this state, but he could feel the stronger aura inside. Look, Marco. Zoro laughed from the side and said, next, you can see our captain's exaggerated state and very interesting ability. It was also by virtue of this that Luffy defeated Admiral Kizaru in Sabaody. Defeat Admiral Kizaru. Marco was shocked when he heard this. Admiral's strength is not weak, and Marine's highest combat power stands at the top of the sea. Even he can only rely on his ability to hold back, and it is not difficult at all to defeat it. And the Straw Hat defeated Admiral in Sabaody. I haven't heard of it. No, the previous newspaper mentioned that the Straw Hats attacked the Celestial Dragons, so it's normal for Admiral to go to Sabaody. Marco understood. With the strength that the Straw Hats are showing now, it is impossible for Kizaru to defeat him, let alone with so many monsters in the Straw Hats. If the Straw Hat Boy can still show a stronger posture than now, then it is not impossible to defeat Kizaru. With Marco's thinking, Luffy's shift has also been thoroughly completed. He. Accompanied by a very contagious laughter, under the white light, there is Luffy who is almost in the same state as the beginning. It's just that his whole body has turned white now, even his clothes. The white hair was like a burning flame, and the white steam that naturally overflowed from the body also turned into a flame-like ribbon, fluttering around the body. Like a god's ribbon, wrapped around the armpit, suspended above the head and behind. His whole body seemed to be emitting a light. Uncle Whitebeard, let's have a good fight. Luffy smiled happily. Then the whole person disappeared in the same place in an instant. The speed is much faster than that gesture just now. The silver-white light streaks in Whitebeard's eyes flickered, and the keen observation Haki caught Luffy's movements in an instant. He was a little surprised. Luffy, who was in the 4th gear just now, had already had very good speed and strength. He was at the 4 Emperors level steadily, but now he can even go to a higher level. Although surprised in my heart, Whitebeard's shot was not affected in any way. His huge and strong body possessed unimaginable dexterity, and he swung the naginata in his hand, appearing in a key position predictably in advance. The next moment, the fist that has been lingering with white steam has already been punched. Boom. It was another invisible blow from the air. Black and red lightning raged, and the shock wave spread explosively. The collision of fist and naginata. The shattered spirit scattered like silver-white fragments, and the fists and naginata swung open violently. Luffy retracted his fist. Whitebeard, on the other hand, was holding a naginata, and took a step back as if standing unsteadily. In the collision just now, he actually fell into a disadvantage and was forcefully forced to take a step back. What a powerful wrist. There was no angry look on Whitebeard's face, only heroic laughter and excitement. That thin and small body can burst out with more powerful strength than before. Boy, what can you do? However, the next step is the real thing. Whitebeard laughed boldly. The naginata in his hand waved in the air, throwing out a beautiful knife flower. Then he held the naginata with both hands and made a chopping motion. It seems that the surrounding air is stagnant at this moment. A transparent, white halo-like water waves appeared on the blade of the naginata. It's over. Dad is serious. Dad, stop. This is the Moby Dick. If you really want to fight, let's talk about it on the island. A group of old men from the Whitebeard pirates couldn't help shouting in horror when they saw the wavy halo on the Whitebeard naginata. How could they not know what the wavy halo is? Combining the fluctuations of knife energy and shock fruit's ability, the power is terrifying, especially on this kind of sea, on a boat. I am afraid that with one blow, half of the ship will disappear. However, the old man was obviously excited and had no intention of keeping his hand. The muscles in his hands holding the naginata twitched, and the water-like white halo on the blade became more and more solid, like a glass crystal with ice cracks. Luffy could also feel the terrifying pressure from Whitebeard, and the next blow would definitely not be so easy to take. However, in this state, he doesn't have so many negative emotions, he only has a passionate fighting spirit and enjoys the joy of fighting. Rubber, giant. Luffy said loudly. He didn't blow air into his body like in 3rd and 4th gears, but his body expanded naturally and instantaneously. After being enlarged, he is tens of meters tall and looks several times bigger than the average giant. He was standing on the Moby Dick right now, stepping on the entire Moby Dick to a slight tilt. What an exaggerated monster. Marco opened his mouth wide and looked at the huge figure. The huge figure exuded white light all over, and was surrounded by thick ribbons of white steam. At first glance, it seemed that it really looked like a legendary god. As this Luffy, so big. Chopper also had a big mouth. In this state, it was even bigger than when he ate 3 rumble balls. That's how it's fun, kid. The silvery white light marks in Whitebeard's pupils have become more and more obvious. At this moment, just the movement of the line of sight seems to be able to draw 2 silvery white streamers in the air. His arms were muscular and his veins were bulging, and the surrounding air seemed to be boiling violently and vibrating. On the opposite side, the huge Luffy raised his fist high, and the terrifying armed color and Conqueror's Haki were wrapped around it. The collision between the two was in an instant. Everyone looked at the scene in front of them either in horror or shock. Everyone knows that this will eventually be an earth-shattering collision. But the next moment, stop it, you guys. A calm and deep voice sounded, and Rayleigh's slightly bowed figure instantly appeared in the middle of the two. Chapter 53. Marco's Confidence. Advertise here. Rayleigh. Whitebeard curled his lips when he saw the person coming, and said with some disgust. Then he slowly retracted the long knife, and the terrifying vibration and fluctuation also dissipated, as if absorbed by the blade. Uncle Rayleigh. Luffy let out a cry of surprise, and then the body shrank rapidly, the white light disappeared, and the hair returned to its original shape. You two, do you still remember what happened to Ace? Did you two want to have a life and death fight here before the battle with Marine? Rayleigh was quite speechless. He planned a little bit about Luffy's words and deeds before. But, that's just for Whitebeard and Luffy to touch. He knew Whitebeard's egotistical temper very well, after all. No matter how much you say, it's better to collide head-on and feel the strength of both sides, which is more realistic. However, he really didn't expect it. The two of them actually reached this level, and after just a few collisions, they both started to fight. One wanted to use Shock Fruit's ability on the boat regardless, and the other turned on the fifth gear directly. The two of them seemed to be living and dying in the next second. Rayleigh could only stop it hastily. If you don't stop it, there will be a real fight. I'm afraid they will start to reduce their staff here before they start fighting Marine and rescue Ace. But now it seems that the effect is still very good. Rayleigh, who knew Whitebeard very well, knew very well that although Whitebeard's expression on his face didn't change much, he already recognized Luffy very much. After all, Whitebeard likes two best. A young man with enough courage and another kind of strength. As for Luffy, it is precisely the combination of the two in an enlarged version, coupled with the identity of Ace's younger brother. Whitebeard is almost covered with several layers of halo. Thank goodness, saved. Marco couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief seeing Rayleigh stop the two of them from doing it. Dad was obviously on top just now. If the collision of that level just now broke out, the Moby Dick might be severely disabled. Although the ship is not a scarce commodity for the Whitebeard pirates. But this Moby Dick is their mother ship. From the very beginning when Marco boarded the ship, he and Whitebeard sailed on the Moby Dick on the sea. Moreover, the sea area here is also very far away from the land. If the ship is gone here, the crew members on the ship, especially the ability users, will have problems. Father is really true, he always goes up like this. Marco sighed and said, obviously his body needs to rest now. So is our captain, always so self-willed. Zoro has long seen that the Whitebeard pirates have no hostility toward them, and there is no murderous intent in their attacks, just pure temptation. At this moment, the atmosphere on both sides is harmonious, and naturally they empathize with their own captain. The two second-in-commands looked at each other with a feeling of sympathy. This is all because of meeting a wayward captain. Tell me, Whitebeard. Rayleigh looked at Whitebeard seriously. Whitebeard frowned, sat on the huge chair, looked down at Rayleigh, didn't say anything, just nodded slightly. After a while, the deck of the Moby Dick is full of fruits and meat. Pirates came out of the cabin one by one, and the huge deck could accommodate hundreds of people for a banquet. Different from the battle just now, the atmosphere is harmonious at this moment. The members of the Straw Hat Pirates and the members of the Whitebeard Pirates gathered together to hold a banquet. Speaking of which, you are really strong, Roranoa. It's really hard to imagine that you are only pirates who have only been at sea for a year, and you are just a little less in number. In terms of strength alone, you are already almost the same as the four Emperor's pirates. Gone. Marco sat directly opposite Zoro, raised a glass of wine and praised. To each other, the strength of the four Emperor's pirate group is well deserved. Zoro spoke. This is not a compliment, he can deeply feel how great his progress is. It can be said that the previous him, in his current view, was as weak as an ant, but it was such a huge improvement. Here in the Whitebeard Pirates, they were also blocked and could not be suppressed. And Sanji, Chopper, was blocked by a single captain. There are more than a dozen such captains in the Whitebeard Pirates. And Zheng Jin's captain of the second team, Fire Fist Ace, was arrested. Otherwise, in today's situation, it would be really difficult for Luffy to walk in front of Whitebeard. To put it bluntly, the strongest of the three remaining team captains, the first team, the third team, and the fifth team captain, was blocked by them. And the other captains, one-on-one, felt that they were not Luffy's opponents at all, so they didn't play. Otherwise, another one of Marco's level will be able to hold Luffy back. This is the background and strength of the four Emperor's pirates. Your swordsmanship is unique and powerful. Wajien gracefully stroked his mustache from the side, and said to Zoro, among the swordsmen I have fought against, I am afraid that Haki is the only one whose swordsmanship is better than yours now. Haki. Zoro touched the scar on his chest, and the encounter in the restaurant on the sea sounded, that great swordsman who was so powerful that he was not of the same dimension. I will challenge him for the position of the world's #1 swordsman. Zoro said in a deep voice. There will be a chance. Foil Sword said with a smile. For this war, the government has launched a mandatory call. Haki will appear in the war. With your sword skills and strength, you can definitely fight. Zoro's swordsmanship and comprehensive strength are already faintly stronger than him. It is only a little bit away from the #1 swordsman in the world. It's delicious. The seasoning of this sauce and the heat of the steak are just right. Your cooking skills are very good. Sanji admires one of the cooks on Whitebeard's boat. But the chef's expression darkened. Captain Sachi's culinary skills are the best. Unfortunately, Captain Ace went after Blackbeard for the sake of Captain Sachi, and that's what happened. As soon as this remark came out, the members of the surrounding Whitebeard pirates fell silent for an instant. After questioning, everyone in the Straw Hat Pirates knew the cause and effect of Ace's incident. But I don't know what to say. If Ace can win the battle against Blackbeard, everything will be much better. Unfortunately, the result now is the exact opposite. Don't worry, Ace will definitely be rescued this time. Our current combat power is very strong. Marco smiled to ease the atmosphere. Of course, it is not a complete relaxation of the atmosphere. He is now much more confident than before. As a ship's doctor, he knew very well how bad his father's physical condition was. When Ace first got on the boat 2 years ago, Dad needed a drip. The situation has worsened in the past 2 years. Although the current strength is still very strong, Marco is not optimistic at all. Dad's illness is like a time bomb, it may explode at any time, and once it explodes in battle, it will be fatal. In addition, the opponent is Marine's full strength, and the opponent's home game, their chances of winning are actually very low. But it's better now. The strength of the Straw Hat Pirates has almost doubled their top combat power. Adding a Straw Hat boy who is not inferior to the old man's combat power is equivalent to having an extra 4 Emperor's assist punch. If you add the red-haired side, they are really worthy of Marine. However, all of this depends on the meaning of the people over there. Everyone looked to the other end of the deck, where Whitebeard, Rayleigh, and Luffy were. Chapter 54 The Largest War in History. Advertise here. On the other side of the deck, Whitebeard sat on a tall chair. Rayleigh and Luffy didn't pay much attention, they just sat cross-legged on the deck, opposite Whitebeard. You don't really have much confidence in rescuing Ace, Whitebeard. Rayleigh said calmly. Whitebeard, on the other hand, was silent. In the eyes of your son, you are still that Whitebeard, the strongest man in the world, who can do everything, but only you know that you are far less powerful than when you were young. You are deeply aware that Marine's strength is not so easy to deal with. Rayleigh took a sip of his wine and sighed slightly. Time is not forgiving. Even the strongest man in the world cannot escape the passing of time. After all, I'm just a mortal, not a real monster. Whitebeard held up the huge wine jar, gulped down the wine, and said in a low voice. However, I must have rescued Ace, gurgling, I have full confidence. Rayleigh looked up and looked at the laughing Whitebeard, his face changed slightly, he had already thought of something. Whitebeard, you're not going to. Isn't this normal? Rayleigh, this is not our era anymore. This new era is the era of this kind of kid. It can no longer tolerate remnants like us. Whitebeard looked at Luffy with a soft look in his eyes. Just like you chose this kid, I also have my will successor, Ace, he is a very good son, he will inherit my will, and fly high in this sea. This is your will. Rayleigh understood. From this moment, he thoroughly understood the psychology of this old friend. He took part in this war with the belief that he must die. No one can imagine how terrifying it is for a man to step onto the battlefield with the belief that he must die. Especially this Whitebeard, who is known as the strongest man in the world, is going to the end of his life, burning a war with his last life. Rayleigh thought of Luo Jia. At the end of their lives, legendary men like them can burst out energy beyond anyone's imagination. Sengoku, the world government and the others, no matter what plans they made this time, I am afraid they will all fail. The thought crossed Rayleigh's mind automatically as he looked into Whitebeard's determined, unblemished eyes. Now that you've made a decision, I have a better proposal. How about letting Luffy be the protagonist of this battle? Rayleigh said with a smile. Whitebeard looked at Luffy in front of him, who looked puzzled. With his current strength, no matter where he is, he will never be a supporting role. I mean, surround Luffy with all your strength, and it might work better. Rayleigh began. This is the purpose of his coming this time. In the following war, it must be a battle of the highest scale beyond the imagination of the world. Admiral's combat power is not rare. On the entire battlefield, even Admiral couldn't act so easily. With Luffy's rampant character, it is easy to get out of touch with the main force, and once out of touch, he will be besieged by 2, or even 3 Admiral-level characters. Even with his powerful strength in the 5th gear, it is impossible to deal with it easily. Coupled with so many Marine Vice Admirals and soldiers nearby, it is easy to be in great danger. And the Whitebeard pirates are very powerful. Those team captains, as well as those who joined Whitebeard's command, those independent pirate groups, every pirate captain, are well-known figures in New World. Counting those independent captains, this is the huge combat power of the Whitebeard pirate group, the 4 Emperors group. The huge combat power that Marine cannot underestimate. And this is also the reason why the 4 Emperors are truly powerful enough to cause headaches for the world government. Their main group, as well as the combat power formed by the pirate group under their command, are truly elite, capable of fighting a large-scale war. With the support of such a huge combat force, Luffy's situation on the battlefield will be much easier, and many people will share the pressure from all directions for him. After all, no matter how strong a person is, his physical strength is not unlimited after all, especially in a high-strength war, the consumption of physical strength will be even greater. This brat. Whitebeard watched Luffy seriously. He's very nice and I admire him a lot. However, Rayleigh, I want to know, what do you think of this brat, and how much can you do for this brat? Whitebeard's pupils turned and stared at Rayleigh. The cooperation between men on the sea is more about the consciousness of the other party. Especially an old-school strongman like Whitebeard. Isn't the Oro Jackson still standing for something? Rayleigh chuckled softly. Not enough. Whitebeard said flatly. I will join the battle, and, even if I risk my life, I will help Luffy rescue Ace and leave the battlefield smoothly. Rayleigh looked up at Whitebeard. The four eyes meet, and under the lens is a sharp gaze like a sword wave. You are right. Our era has passed. I have seen the tide of the new era, and I am willing to drown in the turbulent tide of this new era. Gu la, you haven't changed at all, Rayleigh. Quote. Whitebeard laughed. Since Ace has been away for so many days, he has never laughed so hard like today. What about you, kid? No matter what is standing in front of me, I will punch it away. I must save Ace, even if it means risking my life. Luffy stood up suddenly, the straw hat on his head shook slightly, and said loudly. Looking at the determined young man, looking at the immature but Haki face, and the familiar, slightly worn straw hat. Whitebeard was slightly distracted. This straw hat is also a bit old. It's old, but it's always there. Rayleigh smiled. Gu la. Whitebeard laughed boldly and said, then, let's have a big fight with Marine. The heroic laughter seemed to be able to interfere with the banquet over there, and the low mood of the entire banquet rose instantly. After a while, Whitebeard stood in front of everyone. Standing next to him was Luffy, and on the other side of Luffy was Rayleigh. Little ones, the war has begun. Whitebeard vigorously raised the naginata in his hand to the sky, and let out a heroic roar. Quote. Surging cheers resounded through the sky. Time goes by little by little. In a blink of an eye, 2 days have passed, after dawn. Marineford, the port of naval headquarters. 2 admirals, Kizaru and Aokiji, boarded the warship, and together with Garp who looked complicated. Today is the time for the public execution of Ace announced by the government. Today is also a day when he can no longer escape from his heart. Let's set sail. Aokiji sighed slightly, glanced at Garp, and said to the marine soldier. More than a dozen warships sailed out of the port together, and their destination was the prison of Imper. Naval headquarters, a spacious meeting room. Sengoku stood on the high platform, watching the warship going away. His heart can't be calm at this moment, because he has planned for the upcoming war for so many days, and he still doesn't have the confidence or absolute certainty to win. Is everything ready, Sengoku? Suru's thin body appeared next to Sengoku and asked. All the preparations that can be made have been made, and then we can only see the direction of this war. Sengoku said in a low voice. Aren't you worried about Whitebeard going straight to Imper's prison? Crane asked. 3 gates of justice. There are special sea currents in the inner sea area. When the gates are closed, ships cannot escape at all. The headquarters has absolute control. If Whitebeard attacks Impel, the gates of justice will be locked. Whitebeard sea thieves are just a turtle in a urn. What if you hijack the ship while escorting Firefist Ace out? It's so close to the gate of justice that if Whitebeard hijacks the ship after he's out of the gate of justice, Pelusalino, Aokiji is enough to hold him back. With Aokiji's ability to freeze the sea, Whitebeard can only passively fight us. Moreover, if they hijack the ship, they will not be able to bring the combat power of many pirates under their command, which is equivalent to cutting off their own arm. Sengoku said in a deep voice, he has considered all the possibilities. This is an absolute conspiracy. Whitebeard's best choice is to steal Firefist Ace in front of them in Marineford. In this case, the opponent's odds of winning will be reduced to an extreme. However, after all, he was facing Whitebeard. Even at this level, he did not have the slightest confidence. After all, he has played against Whitebeard too many times, and he knows better than anyone how difficult Whitebeard is. If only Whitebeard chose to attack Impel, we can take it easy. The T-Dolphin said boredly from the side. The waiting time before the war is the most boring, especially for the strong. He won't. That fellow Whitebeard is very sharp. He won't fall into such an obvious wrong trap, and he will definitely appear in front of me in a situation that I didn't guess. Sengoku said in a low voice, full of certainty. After all, when he was young, Whitebeard was the main target of arrest. They can be said to be old enemies. What about the other 4 emperors? In this war, if they participate in the war, we will be completely passive. Crane continued to ask. She seems to help Sengoku improve the overall situation and calm down through this question and answer method. The other 4 emperors, those old men up there did it. Sengoku said, if the world government hadn't made such a guarantee, they wouldn't dare to go to war with Whitebeard. Breaking the balance of the sea is no joke. If you are not careful, it will end in a crash. Marine is the strongest alone in this sea, but if the 4 emperors join forces to attack Marine, even Marine cannot bear it. Above, is it the exchange of benefits for the superior? He said in a flat tone, as if he had seen through everything completely. Red line, Holy Land Mariajoy. Pangu City, between the powers. Asking for flowers. 5 elders gathered here, 5 people sat at a long table. Aren't we a little too impatient for this war? 5 elders in black hats said calmly, In my opinion, this war can be postponed for about a year, and we will have more spare capacity. 1 year's variables are too long. 5 elders, who was holding the demon sword and wearing Taoist clothes, said, "It's like swinging a knife, grasp the timing and swing the best knife, now is the best time." Speaking of which, didn't we promote this balance? When we first promoted the balance, we should have known that there would be a day when the balance would be broken. The blonde 5 elders rested his hands on his chin, looking calm. The era of the great pirate has lasted for too long. The execution of Luo Jia back then was a failure, which led to today's situation. Then the life of another great pirate will end this era. Long Whitebeard's tall, lanky 5 elders murmured. Then the bald mustache 5 elders also echoed sharply, "Through this war, we will show the majesty of the district government to the whole world." 5 elders in the black cap didn't say anything either. It's too late to say anything now, and what he said just now was just a little emotion, so he asked instead. Have all the preparations been made? 4 Emperors Shanks has arranged for Kaido to stop it, and BIGMOM has made it clear that they will not participate in the war. A pirate is a pirate, because a little profit in front of him can be easily driven. If they weren't pirates, it would be a headache for us. They are not weak in ambition and strength. Unfortunately, their vision and wisdom are still far behind. In any case, after this war, the balance of the sea will be disrupted, so we need to finish the finishing work. Point 0. Get ready to change the times, everyone. The deep and powerful voice reminded of power, and understatement, repropelled the pattern of this world. This is the 5 elders, the superiors of world power, who control the world's power and power. They sat here silently, waiting for the outcome of the war that, in their view, had already been decided. A piece of sea in the new world. I see, is it the work of the world government? On the redverse, the redhead stood on the bow, looking at the flag of the beast's pirates opposite, his face was covered with a layer of haze. Redhead, can you kill me? The huge ship approached, Kaido standing at the bow, holding a mace, looked at Shanks opposite, with a provocative smile on his face. It seems that it will not pass easily. With his right hand, the redhead drew out the famous knife from his waist, and pointed it straight at Kaido, with a serious expression on his face. Are you ready to die, Kaido? Naval Headquarters, Marineford. Warships gathered around the island, their guns pointing directly at the sea level opposite the naval headquarters. More than that, in front of the execution platform. A tall wall was erected, and a torch stood on it. Inside the wall, in the square in front of the execution platform, are densely packed figures of marine soldiers. In front of the execution platform, on the high platform, sat 3 high-ranking chairs. That is Marine's highest combat power, 3 admirals. Kizaru, Akainu, Aokiji, each of them is a famous figure in the sea. Beneath the 3 admirals, the round-faced Shichibukai calmed down. And in a more forward position. Marine's main vice admiral, giant vice admiral, Crane and Zephyr are also among them. Such a powerful army makes people feel desperate when they look at it. Even Fire Fist Ace, the captain of the 2nd Division of the Whitebeard Pirates. Even though he has spent so many days in the sea, experienced big and small battles. But Marine's combat power here is much stronger than that of a single 4 Emperors pirate group. At this moment, he really hopes. Don't come, Papa and fellow Whitebeard pirates. If I had known about today's situation, I would never have let you go to sea. A low and muffled voice sounded beside Ace. The tall and strong old man sat directly beside Ace. Old man. Ace stared blankly at Garp beside him. Hey, Garp, this is not where you're supposed to be. Sengoku looked at Garp and scolded him. I know Sengoku, let me sit here for a while. Garp's voice was low, and Sengoku wanted to say something, but when he saw the sadness and struggle in his old friend's eyes, he couldn't say anything. HMPH, whatever you want. Sengoku ignored Garp. He knows Garp's struggles and escapes during this time. Justice, and family affection, in his heart, are constantly colliding. This war, also speaking, is the torment of a people. Sengoku refocuses on distant seas. There is a hazy fog in the sea area in the distance, making it difficult for people to see too far. However, when the huge black shadow appeared in the mist, everyone entered a state of alert in an instant. The Whitebeard pirates appeared. The war has begun in inches. Chapter 55. The strong come on stage, the battle begins. Advertise here. Warning, everyone is ready. Sengoku shouted while holding a phone bug. This is the phone that controls the overall situation, enough to deliver orders to any corner of the battlefield. Marine is fighting at home, and for this battle, the preparation time is too long. Pirate ships sailed out of the mist one after another, and each one could cause Marine to exclaim. Because every pirate group that appears is all the famous big pirates in New World. Even if it is the vice admiral in the headquarters, they will be afraid of the kind of 3-pointer. And there are dozens of such pirate ships. This is the background of the Whitebeard pirate group, which is recognized as the strongest among the 4 emperors. Everyone. Ace was on the execution platform, shackled by seastone chains. He could only open his mouth and look at the people who appeared in the distance without a sound. Everyone was so familiar. It made him feel ashamed and guilty. Clang. On the warships, the artillery on the protective wall aimed at the pirate ship that appeared in the distance. Sengoku, however, delayed giving the order to fire. Only because, so far, he has not found any trace of Whitebeard's main ship, the Moby Dick. And, according to intelligence, One Piece Gore de Luogia's main ship, the Oro Jackson, should also be with Whitebeard. The Straw Hat's goal is also to save Firefist Ace. With Plute and Rayleigh on the sidelines, he must have known to join Whitebeard. The Oro Jackson was previously seen on the Fishmen Island, apparently headed to the New World, and connected to Whitebeard. A shadow casts over Sengoku's face when he thinks of Straw Hat. 4 emperors, Whitebeard, all are counted. It's just that the only variable is the Straw Hat pirates, this huge variable. I'm really looking forward to the collision between the Whitebeard pirates and Marine. Where Shichibukai was in front of the high platform, Doflamingo laughed loudly. Spreading his hands, he was like a lunatic embracing the 677 battlefields. The Empress glanced at him with disgust. Will Rayleigh be in the war too? Although her attitude towards Rayleigh was mediocre, Hancock knew in her heart that she still had an important favor with Rayleigh. Back then, if it wasn't for Rayleigh and Shaki, she couldn't have jumped back to the Amazon Lily so easily. But she heard that Rayleigh helped the Straw Hat Boy to participate in the war. Marine's power is much stronger than expected. Gecko Moria's injury has completely healed. He stretched out his thick and long neck, looked around, and said in a shrill voice, Marshal Sengoku, 3 Admiral, Hero Garp, Black Arm Zephyr, Staff Crane, Momosuge, T Dolphin. The golden generation of Marine's older generation, and Admiral's substitute Admiral of this generation are all here. It's really amazing how powerful Marine is, and the determination of this war. Whitebeard. Hawkeye doesn't care about the surrounding things at all, he only cares about the next opponent. He just wants to use the knife in his hand to measure the distance between him and the strongest in the world, that's all. Sengoku on the stage is still holding a live phone bug, announcing to the world the true life experience of Firefist Ace, as well as the force and majesty of Marine, world government. After the preaching was over, a Marine soldier walked up to Sengoku's side and reported softly. Newly promoted Shichibukai, Blackbeard Teach snatched a warship and left, and, the door of justice opened. Blackbeard, that guy. Sengoku gritted his teeth. He already knew that Blackbeard had a purpose, but he didn't expect it to be at this critical moment. Moreover, his target was probably Imper. And I have to say that he chose a good timing. At this time, Marine was unable to support the Impel prison, and the prison's defense force was weakest. Notify Magellan, let him be vigilant, and release Shiryu if necessary. Sengoku didn't panic much, though. Even without Marine support, Imper's defense force is very strong. It is impossible to block 4 emperors, but it is more than enough to block a Blackbeard. The most important thing now is to deal with Whitebeard in front of him. After all, in front of the execution platform, in front of the protective wall, and behind the warships, the sea is under the sea. A huge shadow had already appeared, and a bad feeling floated in Sengoku's heart. Below the surface of the sea, 3 pirate ships are floating in love. Is everything ready? Heavy footsteps came from the deck of the Moby Dick. Wearing a white cloak and holding a naginata, Whitebeard walked out of the cabin with a calm smile on his face. The naginata in his hand was accompanied by the sound of footsteps, and the bottom of the naginata collided with the deck, producing a crisp sound. At this distance, the light from the sea can already be seen. Ah, we must save Ace this time. Luffy slightly pressed the straw hat, whispered. Beside him, Zoro's face was full of fighting intent. He gently took off the turban on his shoulders, and then tied it on his head forcefully. His fingers trembled slightly, as if he was playing a piano, playing on the handle of the knife. Don't hold me back later, Chlorella. Sanji lightly lit a cigarette and said indifferently, Admiral, I haven't played yet, how about a banquet package? Chopper's face was determined, and he had already turned into a strong human form, with 4 Rambo balls in his fingers, and the hair all over his body was slightly blown up. This is when my brave sea warrior, Usopp, becomes famous. With a sniper mask on Usopp's face and a long slingshot in his hand, his vigor is obviously different. What an energetic young man. Marco pushed his eyes and said with a smile, a blue flame flashed in his eyes. Then let's go to war. Whitebeard shook the naginata hard on the deck, and laughed. Boom. 3 huge pirate ships broke through the water, just like the leader Lu floating from the bottom of the water. Bang, bang, bang. Huge bubbles meet the sound of air breaking open. On the pirate ship, Moby Dick is in the middle, and standing on the bow are Whitebeard, Luffy and Plute and Rayleigh. Behind them are the captains of the Whitebeard pirates and the members of the Straw Hat Pirates. Of course, in this case, all the eyes and focus of everyone present are on Whitebeard. Because, he is the legendary Whitebeard. Legend has it that pirates, 4 emperors, the strongest man in the world, each title is enough to shock the whole world, and he is all gathered in one body. Gu-la-la-la, it's really lively. Whitebeard stood at the bow of the ship, looked at the dark marine ahead, and said with a smile. As the coating coming up from the bottom of the sea, it was put together. Sengoku stood in front of the execution platform with a slightly ugly face. But this is just the opponent's small victory, it's not a big problem. Father. Seeing Whitebeard appeared in front of him, Ace couldn't bear it anymore. Like a regretful, wrong child seeing his parents, he cried out in pain. Ace, stay there, I'll take you home. 11. Whitebeard stood on the Moby Dick, facing the execution platform, stretched out his hand gently, his eyes full of tolerance. And Luffy, who was standing next to Whitebeard, couldn't help shouting when he saw Ace on the execution platform. Ace, wait for me, I'm here to save you. Luffy. If seeing Whitebeard is like seeing his father, then Ace seeing Luffy is like seeing his naughty younger brother appearing in the most dangerous place. My heart was suddenly surprised, but moved and worried. And next to him, someone's emotions fluctuated more intensely than his. Luffy the bastard. From the beginning to the end, Garp's impression of Luffy is still in the 7 capitals of water. Even though Kizaru said that he was once defeated by Luffy, in Garp's eyes, Luffy was still that immature, disobedient kid. However, when he really appeared on this battlefield, Garp's face became extremely ugly, and the torment of family affection and justice became more and more intense. He could only hold his hands on his chest, lowered his head, and his eyes seemed to be covered with a layer of haze. Straw Hat Kid. 3 admirals sit high in the top 3. When Whitebeard appeared, Kizaru didn't show much, but when he heard Luffy's voice, he sat up straight. A look of apprehension appeared in his eyes. He was not afraid of Whitebeard. He had fought against him before, and the opponent was very strong, but his speed was relatively slow, and he was slightly restrained by his ability. But Straw Hat is different. The 5th gear, the bonus to physical fitness, plus the attainments of physical skills and Conqueror's Haki. He is the type of strong man who can really injure himself. What's the matter, Pelusalino? Akainu and Aokiji looked at the excited Kizaru with doubts in their eyes. Although they knew that Kizaru was injured in the fight with the Straw Hat, they didn't know the process of the fight. No, nothing. Kizaru waved his hand. On the Moby Dick in the distance. Whitebeard stood at the bow of the boat, his pupils slanted down, looked at Luffy and said, "Hey, brat, do you feel that there are too many people in front of you?" "What do you mean? I'm going down to rescue Ace." Luffy tilted his head, and then looked at the execution platform with a look of urgency. "Don't worry, let's give Marine a meeting gift first, let's say hello." Whitebeard had a smile on his face. "What?" Luffy looked puzzled. Rayleigh beside him gently tugged on Luffy's clothes, pulled him behind, and said with a smile. "You'll see right away, Whitebeard's ability to destroy the world." Destroy the world. The surrounding Zoro and Sanji couldn't help but be a little curious. Although they have been with the Whitebeard pirates for so long, they have never seen Whitebeard's ability to stimulate him. The last time he was about to activate, he was interrupted by Rayleigh. With a smile on Whitebeard's face, he thrust the Naginata hard into the deck, clenched his fists and crossed them in front of his chest, the muscles in his arms instantly stretched out. His already thick arms became stronger and full of strength at this moment. 2 ball-shaped white halos emerged on his fist, like transparent spherical crystals. Shock. Luffy's eyes narrowed slightly, he could keenly feel the vibration of the surrounding air. The next moment, Whitebeard slammed his fists to the side. Click click click. Like a shattered mirror, accompanied by a soft sound, the space on both sides of Whitebeard shattered like a spider's web. Cracks shining with silver-white light started to extend from Whitebeard's fist, extending to the sky above. Gu la la la. Whitebeard let out a heroic laugh. Zoro Sanji behind them all stared wide-eyed. The space is torn apart. However, what surprised them even more was yet to come. After a while, the entire sea began to violently fluctuate. 2 huge waves, as high as 100 meters, directly surpassed the apex of the highest naval headquarters on Marineford. This is a tsunami large enough to submerge the entire Marineford. Papa is an earthquake man who eats shock fruit, which can cause earthquakes and tsunamis. Marco explained behind him. What a destructive force. Even Zoro couldn't help showing a shocked look. No wonder the world government is so afraid of Whitebeard. This ability to trigger a tsunami can easily destroy a large island. It is not an exaggeration to say that he has the ability to destroy the world. However, since Marine dared to face Whitebeard, he naturally has the ability to deal with the tsunami. Then, I'll make the first move. A lazy voice sounded. Aokiji stood up slowly and said. Hereby, a sharp ice edge appeared on the ground, and the figure of the pheasant had disappeared. Appeared in the sky above naval headquarters in an instant. Ice Age. Facing the raging tsunami on both sides, Aokiji whispered. Then icicles stretched out towards the 2 sides, and when the icicles touched the waves, they froze rapidly at a speed visible to the naked eye. When the waves did not fall at all, a tsunami was directly frozen into frost. Not just waves on either side. Chill rides down the waves. The sea around Marineford was freezing at a speed visible to the naked eye. Your ability is too troublesome. Aokiji fell from the sky, looked at Whitebeard in the distance, and said calmly. If the opponent frequently triggers tsunamis, then no matter how many Marines there are, it won't be enough to fight. HMPH, Ice Cube Brat. Whitebeard looked at the freeze in the distance, and said lightly. It's up to the 2 of you, Straw Hat Kid, Rayleigh. Give this war a little, cut it down a bit. Just what I want. Luffy pressed the straw hat and smashed his hands into fists, white steam rose from his skin. The next moment, he suddenly disappeared from the Moby Dick. When he appears again, they have already crossed the protective wall and came to the sky above the square in front of the execution platform, and below this are tens of thousands of Marine elite soldiers. Straight ahead are Marine's high-end forces, Admiral, Vice Admiral, and Shichibukai. With such a close distance, Ace and Garp on the execution platform can even see Luffy's expression. What? Whitebeard and Rayleigh, everyone on the Moby Dick opened their mouths at the moment, looking at Luffy who was falling towards the Marine crowd ahead. What is that kid doing? Whitebeard looked stunned. He just wants the Straw Hat to release Conqueror's Haki. Why would he charge alone, or charge 4.8 to the enemy's deep position? That guy. Zoro couldn't help but sighed. I knew, with his character, how could he accept the battle plan so honestly? But to say so, although very helpless. But Zoro jumped off the boat immediately. This is our captain, do you know how capricious he is? Sanji said to the stunned Whitebeard and Rayleigh. With a step on the foot, a slight air explosion sounded, and Sanji's figure disappeared instantly. And in the square in front of the execution platform. To be honest, the appearance of Luffy stunned the senior management of Marine and the soldiers here. But they were enemies after all. They immediately raised their spears and aimed at Luffy who was falling in the air. Get out of here. Luffy looked at the densely packed Marine soldiers below, and let out a cold shout. Boom. The moment he landed, an unimaginably huge black-red shock wave spread around. It was as if a storm was blowing up in this square. The Marine soldiers who were closer were even like fallen leaves rolled up by a storm, and they were carried and flew away in front of the Conqueror's Haki, which was as substantial as it was. A large number of Marine soldiers rolled their eyes and fell to the ground. This is Luffy's Conqueror's Haki. After evolution, his Conqueror's has reached the top of the sea, which is no worse than Shanks's. Hey, this is the Straw Hat Kid. What a powerful Haki. There are only Vice Admirals who can stand up. Doflamingo laughed, hiding his shock with laughter. However, as soon as he finished speaking, he saw Vice Admiral, the mole who was heading towards him, kneeling on the ground on one knee. This Conqueror's Haki is much stronger than his. He'd heard about the Straw Hat when Bellamy, wasn't that a new guy? How could it be? This frightening Conqueror's Haki is like an emperor who dominates the world. Chapter 56. Fighting of Monsters. Advertise here. Straw Hat, you. Sengoku looked at the Marine soldiers who either rolled their eyes and fainted, or knelt on one knee, the veins in the corners of their eyes popped up, and roared loudly. The terrifying aura spread from his body like a hemispherical shock wave, hitting Luffy's Haki fiercely. Straw Hat Boy's Conquerors came up like a raging wave, crushing Sengoku's Conqueror's Haki. Boom. An invisible spirit exploded in the air with a roar. Bursting with courage, Sengoku took a step back on the execution platform. Ordinary Marine soldiers can't see the doorway inside. But those strong people saw clearly. Marshal Sengoku's Conqueror's Haki was completely defeated by Straw Hat's Conquerors. Even the fact that Sengoku didn't go all that far with Conquerors is pretty shocking. However, Sengoku's shot was not without any use. He blocked the Straw Hat Boy's Conqueror's wanton spread, so that Marine would not lose so much staff. Luffy. Garp stared in shock at Luffy who fell steadily in the square in front of the execution platform, and there was no Marine soldier in a large area around him. Those who were closer were blown away by the momentum, while those who were a little farther away, those of the Vice Admiral level all knelt down in front of him on one knee, like an emperor. Garp is like meeting his grandson for the first time. The strength of the Conqueror's Haki can be unleashed by ordinary powerhouses, even if it is not inferior to him. No, not even 1 point better than his Conquerors. What exactly happened that made Luffy so powerful in a short period of time? At this moment, Garp has mixed emotions. He doesn't know whether he should be pleased with Luffy's growth, or whether he should struggle with whether he should make a move. What a reckless brat. On the Moby Dick in the distance, Whitebeard complained. However, although it was a complaint, there was an unconcealable smile and appreciation on his face. Everyone, cover the Straw Hat Boy's charge with all your strength. Whitebeard stood on the Moby Dick, thrusting Kong Yunch into the air vigorously, roaring loudly. On the ice behind him, there was a group of New World powerhouses coming like a tide. Straw Hat Luffy. With his reckless and willful behavior, the morale of his own Team 26 has been raised to the highest point. Straw Hat Boy. How could he be so powerful? Hawkeye's sharp eyes looked towards Luffy who was very close to them. I still remember that when I saw this young man in the restaurant on the sea before, the strength of the other party was frighteningly weak, although because of his courage and will, he thought that this group of young men would eventually become strong in the West. But at that time, it was less than a year from now. How could it grow so fast? Is this the man you put an arm on? Shanks. Hawkeye's mood changed at this moment. He thought of his former friend. The man named Redhead turned out to be in a little East Blue and lost an arm. The thought of cutting towards the strongest in the world gradually dissipated. A stronger thought came to his mind. He wanted to use the black knife in his hand to try the strength of the man entrusted by Shanks. Den den. Hawkeye's boots stepped on the ground and made a crisp sound, which was so harsh on this battlefield that was silent because of Conqueror's Haki, the Straw Hat Kid. The Empress looked at him and frowned. Doflamingo had an unexpected smile on his face. It's really rare, you are so active and proactive. Hawkeye didn't pay attention to Doflamingo's words, he just pulled out the big black sword behind his back forcefully. Obviously everyone saw that he swung his knife at the speed of an ordinary person. But when his blade fell, an unimaginably huge green blade energy sliced through the ground and slashed towards the Straw Hat Boy not far away. Has Hawkeye made a move? Sengoku clearly saw this scene from the high platform. Although I don't know why Hawkeye, who has always been relatively indifferent, suddenly took the initiative, but this is a good thing. As a rare Lone Ranger in Shichibukai, his strength is undeniably powerful, comparable to Admiral-level combat power. Boom. The emerald green saber aura is like a hill, tens of meters high in height alone. And the speed was extremely fast, almost in an instant, it came to Luffy. Luffy was about to make a move, but stopped suddenly, with a big smile on his face. The next moment, a figure wearing a green turban appeared in front of him instantly. Clang. The blade beeped. A cold light suddenly appeared, and then turned into a black on in the next moment. One knife flow, black, 306 trouble wins. A deep voice sounded like reciting poetry. In the flat ground, several black sword waves cut towards the emerald green sword waves like a wind. Boom. A storm blew up in the flatlands. The violent wind rattled the clothes of Zoro and Luffy. Dozens of scattered sword waves passed by, and dozens of sharp incisions were easily cut on the ground. The frozen iceberg-like sea waves in the distance made a heavy sound, and then a large piece of ice fell off from above, and the cut was as smooth as a mirror. You're too reckless, Luffy. A deep and magnetic voice sounded, and Zoro stood in front of Luffy, lightly flicking the black knife on his hand. What are you afraid of? I know you will follow, hee. Luffy smiled indifferently. Zoro looked helpless, but didn't say much. When all the sword waves dissipated, Hawkeye looked at the man standing in front of the Straw Hat Kid, and was a little surprised. Roronoa. The slash just now was already at the level of a great swordsman. Is this really the three-sword swordsman I met at the restaurant on the sea? It must have grown too fast. For a moment, Hawkeye felt a sense of trance. If you want to kill someone, did you find the wrong person? Hawkeye. Zoro pulled out the word Hidao from his waist, put it in his mouth, bit it with his teeth, and said with a grin, like a bloodthirsty beast, his eyes were sharp and terrifying generally. Finished. Zoro swung the three knives in an instant, countless silver lights appeared in the air in an instant, and turned into a terrifying blue whirlwind in the next moment. Three swords style, 1008 worrying winds. The terrifying silver whirlwind blade light swept across the ground, and its power was even stronger than Hawkeye's slash just now. Roronoa. Hawkeye murmured again in a low voice, looking at the sword glow that swept in front of him. There was a rare smile on his face. Since Shanks lost his arm, he hasn't met a swordsman that made his blood boil. But today, he seems to have met again. No matter how he became stronger, he only knew that the one in front of him was a great swordsman of the same level as him, and that was enough. Boom. Hawkeye stepped directly, and the figure ejected from the high platform, swinging the big black sword Yaya in his hand. The heavy pressure of the sword made the space tremble slightly, and then a bright sword wave erupted. The bright sword wave collided with the silver whirlwind sword wave, turning into a storm and sweeping away instantly. The sharp scatter in the knife light. The sound of clanging and collision sounded instantly. Hawkeye held the big black sword in both hands, and collided with the autumn water in Zoro's hand, third-generation Goosh. The terrifying sword aura overflowed, causing the surrounding marine soldiers to retreat involuntarily. This is a battle between two of the strongest swordsmen in the world. Just the aftermath of the battle makes people terrified and afraid to approach. Who is that swordsman? He was able to go head-to-head with the world's #1 swordsman. Marine said in shock. You know, Hawkeye is the #1 swordsman in the world. If Shichibukai had a ranking of strength, he would be the absolute #1 in the ranking of single-player strength. He was a man who had fought the four emperors Shanks several times before. If it wasn't for the Lone Ranger, with his strength, he would definitely be able to pull up a force not weaker than the four emperors' pirates. And other Shichibukai, not on the same level. However, such a powerful existence was given to the present by a young unknown swordsman. He is Roronoa Zoro, the second in command of the Straw Hat Pirates, with a bounty of 120 million berry. Marine, who was familiar with the bounty list, spoke up. However, when the voice fell, the people around had unbelievable expressions on their faces. 120 million rookie pirates. Did you make a mistake? He is the same as Hawkeye Mahawk, how could it be 120 million berry? It is said that it is 3 billion berry, and some people believe it. Did you see that, Smoker Commodore? Tashigi said to Smoker beside him with a shocked face. Ah, it's the Straw Hat Boys. Smoker held his cigar in his mouth and clenched his 10 hands tightly, his face was solemn as if dripping water. He really didn't expect that it didn't take long. The members of the Straw Hat Pirates seemed to have evolved, possessing the terrifying strength they are now. Fight against the world's #1 swordsman head-on without losing the wind. As if in a dream, Tashigi looked at Zoro who was fighting Hawkeye with a dreamy feeling, his eyes were full of complex expressions. Straw Hat Boy, it's really interesting, let's find some puppets to try it out. Doflamingo laughed fearing that the world would not be chaotic. Then he stretched out his hand, and the invisible silk thread popped out from his 10 fingers. In an instant, several Marine rear admirals, like puppets, pulled out the long knives around their waists and rushed towards Luffy. Relying on these Marine rear admirals alone certainly cannot pose a threat to the Straw Hat Boy, but this is enough. He just wanted to discuss the other party. However, at this moment, a strong sense of danger lingers in my heart. Doflamingo tilted his head subconsciously. A tiny steel ball grazed his face. Boom. It was obviously just a tiny steel ball, but the power it erupted was like a bomb. Doflamingo's face instantly became gloomy. On one side of his cheek, where the extremely fast steel ball brushed, a small bloodstain appeared, and the bloodstain gradually expanded, bleeding out. Shooting from that direction. How is it possible? Doflamingo looked at the location of the Moby Dick in the distance. Such a small steel ball actually passed through the crowd and almost hit him. Moreover, across such a long distance, there is still such a level of power. Are you kidding me? On the deck of the Moby Dick in the distance, Usopp wears a Sniper King mask on his face, and the huge slingshot in his hand is slightly pulled away. Under the huge perception and knowledge, he can clearly see the specific position of each person. Attached with armed colored steel balls, it is the best bullet. Don't underestimate the sniper of the Straw Hat Pirates. Usopp exclaimed. Just shot Dover. He was the one who shot Lang Ming's steel ball. It's just that the speed is still a bit short, which made Doflamingo react. His strengthening time is still too short. After Luffy played against Whitebeard 2 days ago, he was strengthened with evolution points, but he did not grow to his peak state. Otherwise, the sneak attack just now could definitely hit Doflamingo hard. What a good sniper. I really don't know where that kid found these little monsters. Whitebeard's pupils glanced slightly to the side of Usopp. This brat, who hadn't been seen as powerful before, made people look sideways at that blow just now. With this kind of strength, even on his ship, he can be a captain. Doflamingo was intimidated by the sniper from a distance, but not everyone was intimidated. The Straw Hat Kid rushed into the battlefield in an instant, and the Conqueror's Haki made Marine lose face, and some Marine powerhouses have long disliked him. Grandson of Garp, you are 10,000 years too early to show your prestige on this battlefield. A deep and vicissitudes of life sounded. A muscular old man wearing sunglasses and a marine cloak waved a huge mechanical arm, and directly hit Luffy. Wrist strength strengthened. Carved hoof. Sakura Fubuki. A tall figure appeared in front of Luffy in an instant, with armament Haki wrapped around his palm, and he struck towards the huge mechanical arm. However, at the moment of touching, Chopper's face changed suddenly, and his whole person was instantly suppressed. It's Seastone. Chopper's slightly weak voice called 960. Then the whole thing was blown out. Chopper. Luffy yelled. And the bright light has begun to light up above his head. There's not much time for you to worry about others, Straw Hat, Luffy. A lewd and frivolous voice sounded above his head. Bright light waves almost enveloped the entire sky. Kizaru did not know when it appeared above Luffy's head, with a bright light shining between his hands. Crush, bunt. Zephyr laughed, opened his huge mechanical arms, and grabbed Luffy. 8 feet Chong Guyu. Countless light waves shot towards him behind Luffy. Devil's feet. Fried assorted platter. Brother Luffy, here we come. Murloc Karate, 7,000 tiles, right fist. 2 voices, one appeared behind him, and the other appeared in front of him. A slightly thin and unusually strong figure appeared in front of and behind Luffy in an instant. The terrifying kick turned into countless meteor flames, which collided with countless flickering light waves in the air and made a fierce explosion sound. And on the front, accompanied by Jinbei's punch, the surrounding air seemed to pass by with an invisible wave. Then he punched the huge mechanical arm. It's so heavy, is this the power of the Black Arm Zephyr? Jinbei's face darkened, and he gritted his teeth. HMPH, Hexia Jinbei, you are a Shichibukai, but you helped the enemy. You are also a sinful man. Zephyr snorted coldly, and exerted all his force, trying to push Jinbei down completely. However, at this moment, his peripheral vision was caught by a flash of light. Shining shock, accompanied by a dull and thick sound. The huge impact hit Zephyr directly, sending him flying. With that heavy mechanical arm, a house was smashed to pieces. Threw up. Zephyr stood up, spit out a mouthful, and tore off the tattered clothes on his body. Opposite him, the Straw Hat Boy was being protected by a group of people. Shichibukai Hexia Jinbei, the captain of the 3rd Division of the Whitebeard Pirates, Diamond Joes. Of course, what caught his attention the most was the gentleman-like man standing behind the Straw Hat Boy. It was that man who blocked all of Pelusolino's attacks by himself just now. Definitely not a simple character. Huh, if you want to attack our captain, it's not that simple, Kizaru. Sanji exhaled lightly, and the flames under his feet rose up again, like hot molten iron. Oh, Blackfoot Sanji, what a terrible kicking skill, you were not so strong in Sabaody Archipelago, and you grew up so fast, you are really a monster. Kizaru spoke frivolously, but looked at Sanji with fear in his eyes. Sabaody Archipelago fought briefly afterwards, and the opponent was kicked away by him, but now, he can easily block his 8-foot Chonguyu, that kind of kicking technique is really powerful. And the vigor and oppressive force coming from him is really like a monster. Chapter 57 Admiral shocked, the monsters of the Straw Hats. Advertise here. Looking at Zoro in the distance, who is comparable to Hawkeye at full strength. And Blackfoot Sanji in front of him. Kizaru keenly felt that these two pirates, who were still a little weak against him in the Sabaody archipelago, seemed to usher in a new wave of evolution in the short period of 4 days. Their strength, obviously compared to Sabaody archipelago, has reached another level. Is it admiral-level combat strength again? A thought flashed through Kizaru's mind that he couldn't even believe, and he immediately denied it by himself. It can't be at the admiral level. In a small pirate group, it would be an exaggeration to have a 4 Emperors level character like Straw Hat Boy and a few strongmen at the Emperor's deputy level. If the number 1, number 2, and number 3 are all admiral level combat power, that would be too scary. In Kizaru's impression, only the Rocks pirate, who once made the world government extremely fearful and almost capable of unifying the sea, and the former One Piece, Luogia pirates have this level of combat power. A small pirate group that has been at sea for a year, don't be kidding. Thinking of this, Kizaru's body instantly disappeared and flashed in the air. The extremely fast speed seemed to slow down the entire space. Have you ever been kicked by the speed of light? Blackfoot. Kizaru's figure had appeared in front of Sanji at some point, his slender legs stretched out straight, and the golden streamer at the heel drew a bright trace in the air. And what responded to him was just a puff of misty smoke. Call. There was a slight sound of exhaling smoke, and the smoke was transpiring. A pair of leather shoes burning with black flames stepped directly on Kizaru's shining feet. The black flame seemed to be burning distortedly. Obviously Sanji's leather shoes did not touch Kizaru's light speed kick at all, but Kizaru could clearly feel the feeling of being stepped on. It was like being stepped on by an invisible flame. Terrible strength and pain came from the feet. Kizaru's face became serious for a moment, and he couldn't believe it. He looked at Sanji, his eyes were full of shock. You, Blackfoot, Conqueror's entanglement. Invisible midair kick. Kizaru and 4 Emperors have played against each other many times, how can we not see what kind of ability this is? Kizaru, offer a feast for your life. Sanji's tone of voice was calm at first, but eventually became elevated. His thighs were violently exerted, and the terrifying momentum erupted like a black lightning-like flame flow, and the black flames on his feet became more and more distorted and exuberant. Hereby, Kizaru's whole body turned into a streamer. Kicked back to the marine camp by Sanji. Boom. A huge orange-red hemispherical shock wave exploded. Sanji stepped on the air casually, the flame on his right foot has completely turned black, like the flames of hell. Devil's feet, black ground meat. Sanji looked calmly, looked at the place where Kizaru fell, and said calmly, want to come up to capture the king. Don't look down on people too much, Yinshin. Blackfoot Sanji. Poor Salino Admiral was kicked away by Blackfoot. How is it possible? The Straw Hat pirates are all monsters. The surrounding marine soldiers looked at Sanji in midair, their eyes full of horror. What a headache, all of them are like monsters. Photons gushed out from the ruins, and then quickly condensed into a human form. Kizaru's tone was still as calm as before. But those who are familiar with him know that some actions of Kizaru at this moment show that he is really serious. Can't help but not being serious, Kizaru knew from the moment Blackfoot showed the Conqueror's twine that he was out of luck again. Originally, I wanted to fish in troubled waters, just find a slightly stronger opponent, and muddle through this dangerous war. That's why he went straight to Luffy so early on. If you make a shot now, it will be blocked by the Whitebeard pirates who are protecting the Straw Hat, so you don't have to fight Luffy head on. The last one to fight against the Straw Hat monster must be Admiral who stayed in front of the execution platform. Kizaru has played against Luffy in 5th gear, and he knows the power of 5th gear very well. However, luck was obviously not on his side, or in other words, no one expected that the Straw Hat pirates would have so many monsters. Blackfoot Sanji, the leader of the Straw Hat pirates who doesn't even have a bounty of 100 million. At this moment, he actually showed the Conqueror's entanglement of the 4 Emperors threshold, as well as his physical fitness and kicking skills that are definitely not weak. There is no doubt that this is another Admiral-level monster. It's such a headache, it's obviously just a third in command. Quote. Kizaru moved the foot just mentioned by Sanji slightly. At the ankle position, the trouser legs have been completely broken, exposing the inner ankle, and there are faint traces oozing from the ankle. He still underestimated the enemy in the temptation just now, he didn't treat Haitsu as an opponent of the same level, that's why he suffered such a big loss. However, this kind of injury can still be tolerated by Admiral, who has the same physical fitness as a monster. 8-foot mirror. Kizaru sighed, pulled his hands quickly, and shot a light mirror towards Sanji, very fast, reaching in front of him in an instant. There was no slow forward swing, and when the light arrived in front of Sanji, Kizaru's swift figure had already appeared in front of him. The speed is extremely fast, as if it has been upgraded to a higher level. This is Kizaru's serious state, discarding the slow movements and sloppy mentality, and making a real shot with all his strength, when he and Sabaody are playing against Luffy in 5th gear, a state of 1. Because, he deeply felt that pressure from Sanji. The third in command of the Straw Hat Pirates was not an opponent he could easily deal with before. That's right, whether it's the chef or the ingredients, when cooking, you must put your heart and soul into it. A smile appeared on Sanji's face, as if he had returned to a familiar kitchen, waving the spatula and kitchen knife in his hand. The 2 legs are his kitchen knife and his spatula, which are the basis for him to handle ingredients. Devil God Fangjiao, Black Flame Banquet, Lamb Skewers. On Sanji's 2 feet, black and ominous flames were burning, and the surrounding air was slightly distorted. It's Conqueror's Haki and armament Haki in their extreme richness, and the twisted, invisible flames produced by the heat of his demon wind feet. Boom. Light speed kick with radiant light, and Conqueror's kick with black flames wrapped in armed color. Moment. The whole sky was like bright fireworks exploding. Black flames and golden streamers exploded in the sky, like a grand fireworks dinner. Haitsu, when you fought with me, did you actually keep so many hands? Seeing the astonishing collision in the sky, Foil Vista, who was rushing here in the distance, couldn't help being slightly distracted, and then laughed. What a classy fellow. When fighting against him, if he uses this level of strength, he may only be able to barely parry. After all, he is only slightly inferior to Marco, who is close to Admiral. Compared with the real Admiral, he can barely hold back at most. And Roronoa, the three-sword swordsman. To be able to force Hawkeye to such an extent, when Haki and swordsmanship are at full strength, they are evenly matched. If the monsters of the Straw Hat Pirates really do their best, the Whitebeard Pirates will really lose face in the test on the Moby Dick 2 days ago. As expected of Ace's younger brother, he knows how to save face for the brother pirates. Vista Heart Shunin couldn't help thinking. Ace is a pet in the Whitebeard Pirates. Naturally, everyone has great kindness towards the Straw Hat Pirates, and after this incident, the kindness is even greater. Of course, what Vista didn't know was, 2 days ago, whether it was Zoro or Sanji, their physical fitness had only evolved by half. The huge gap in physical fitness could not fully exert the power of the top-level Conqueror's Haki evolved by the system. Therefore, 2 days ago, although they did not use their full strength. But it is also the greatest strength that can be used at the level of sparring. Completing the final physical evolution in these 2 days is the real qualitative change. From the first-class powerhouse in the sea, the real qualitative change has reached the level of the top powerhouse. The current ones are truly admiral-level powerhouses. What can you do? That black-footed brat. Zephyr commented on the battle between Sanji and Zoro with a smile on his face. I said earlier, that guy Pelusolino is too dependent on fruit, otherwise he would definitely be better than he is now. Facing that kind of brat, it will not be so difficult. The relationship between him and Pelusolino is at odds. Seeing Kizaru deflated at the moment, he is naturally merciless. Of course, that's what he said, but in fact, Zephyr's heart sank slightly. He can naturally see that Kizaru is trying his best, but even so, he can't suppress Blackfoot Sanji. That Blackfoot is a genuine admiral-level combat power. In this war, everyone underestimated the Straw Hat Pirates, even Sengoku was wrong. The Straw Hat Pirates are more than the Straw Hat Boy with a 4 Emperors-level combat power. Roronoa and Blackfoot Sanji are not too far behind. Trouble. Zephyr bit a small piece of wood-like thing, thinking to himself. However, after all, he is just a retired admiral, and there are Sengoku and the others carrying him on top. His role is to defeat a few more brats who protect the Straw Hat Boy. Thinking of this, Zephyr took out the special medicine for asthma from his chest, put it near his mouth, and took a strong breath. Call. Slowly let out a big breath. Zephyr shook his huge mechanical arm, and his whole body exploded like a bomb, like a sleeping tiger waking up at this moment. Both Jinbei and Diamond Chaozi, who bear the brunt, couldn't help staring. Be careful, his mechanical arm is made by seastone, it has too strong a restraining effect on capable users. Jinbei reminded. Diamond Joes looked at Zephyr with serious eyes. Black Arm Zephyr, I have heard about it a long time ago, the previous Marine Admiral, and Garp Sengoku, the Marine Pillar of an era. This man is very strong in physical skills and Haki. Although his right wrist is broken, the huge seastone mechanical arm that Marine gave him has raised his threat to capable users by more than one level. Joes thinks that relying on his fruit ability, Haki, and physical skills, he can hold back any of the 3 admirals. But facing Admiral, who is a strong physicist like Zephyr with a seastone weapon, he really has no confidence in his heart. But on the battlefield, it is not possible to avoid the enemy by finding an excuse. Ace's younger brother, you go first, this person has been taken over by our Whitebeard pirates. Joes whispered. Your task is to charge forward, and we will be beside you to cover your charge with all our strength. But, Joe. Hereby, Luffy wanted to say something else. But it was interrupted by Jinbei immediately. Don't worry, brother Luffy, what you have to do now is to maintain your strength, there are even worse battles waiting for you ahead. You are our admiral, how can you stop here, brother Ace is still waiting for you. Quote. I get it, then I'll leave it to you, Jinbei, doctor. Luffy stared, said loudly, and then continued to rush towards the execution platform. Stop talking big, little devils, if you can block my words, just give it a try. Zephyr laughed out loud. Boom. In an instant, a hemispherical pothole burst out on the ground under his feet. It was a high-speed burst of shaved, destructive power produced in an instant. In an instant, Zephyr's body passed between Josie and Jinbei. How is this possible? Jinbei turned his head in astonishment, but he couldn't stop Zephyr's progress. With such a huge and heavy weapon on its back, can it still explode at this speed? Is this the admiral of the older generation? Jaws's eyes were also full of horror. Brother Luffy. Ace's younger brother. Jinbei and Josie shouted towards Luffy's back, but even their voices could hardly catch up with Zephyr's figure at this moment. Here, get away from Luffy. With a roar, it exploded out of thin air. A tall figure with bursting hair instantly appeared behind Luffy, blocking Zephyr's front. Little elk, do you still want to stop me? Zephyr laughed loudly, raising the mechanical arm in his hand high. Crush, rough beat. Those with mere ability, send me to hell. Luffy, he is the man who will become the One Piece, and I am the ship doctor of the Straw Hat Pirates, so I will guard his back. Rambo Ball, body strengthening. 4 Rambo balls were crushed in his mouth, and huge power penetrated his entire body in an instant, but Chopper didn't enter the huge body shape. Instead, the body suddenly expanded proportionally, and the muscles exploded more and more, obviously. Carved hoof, Sakura Fubuki. Chopper raised his muscular arms high and high, and his fists had an invisible and huge cohesion. Ah ah ah. The long roar like a ferocious beast directly overwhelmed the surrounding hustle and bustle. Intense invisible fluctuations, mixed with falling light like Sakura flowers. Like a flower ball of Sakura brought together by an invisible wind. Boom. Sakura's flower ball collided with the giant mechanical arm. As if good promised good, as if there was a flash of lightning. Then a spherical transparent wave spread rapidly, devouring everything inside the sphere. Why? You are clearly a mere capable person, why can you still resist under my arm? In the middle of the collision, Zephyr said with a look of surprise. If you rely on that seastone arm, then as long as you don't touch it. Chopper roared loudly. No touch. Zephyr froze for a moment, then suddenly realized. Chopper's fist and his mechanical arm seemed to be separated by an invisible membrane. While Conqueror's Haki is not as strong as Straw Hat, Blackfoot's is stronger. But it's obvious. Conqueror's winding. How is this possible? Zephyr's 3 senses are about to be shattered. 1, 2, and now a third, the Straw Hat ship medics are in control of Conqueror's winding. When did Conqueror's Haki and Conqueror's twine suck? Back off, Yinshin. Chopper roared, and unimaginable strength erupted from his thick arms. The superimposed power of the 4 blue wave balls surged in his body, strengthening his strength every moment. His body has not yet fully evolved, and Haki's use and fighting skills are not as good as Zoro and Sanji, but he has medical skills, and the Rambo ball created based on medical skills. Allowing him to truly erupt, far beyond the power of basic qualities. Like now. Boom. With huge force, Zephyr was pushed away abruptly. There was a violent explosion in the air, and Chopper was like a pitcher. The violent air waves and white sonic boom clouds exploded radially. Zephyr flew between Jinbei and Josie at a faster speed. A violent air wave was rolled up, blowing the cloaks of the 2 people. The marine soldiers in the distance couldn't accept the sight in front of them. Zephyr Admiral He was struck down by Tony Chopper with a bounty of 50 Baileys on offer. Really, the pet of the Straw Hat Pirates can actually defeat the former admiral. Chapter 58. Chopper's Awakening, Akainu Shots. Advertise here. I'm not a pet, but a ship's doctor. Chopper yelled at the marine soldiers in the distance. Pet, 50 Bailey, the combination of these 2 words is his biggest pain now. The smoke and dust dissipated, and his complete figure appeared in front of everyone's eyes. With a strong body of more than 3 meters, his hair is blown out. If the hair is excluded, his body shape is like an ordinary human being enlarged in proportion. Just much stronger. The antlers are curved and extended, looking extremely sharp, and the muscles of the arms are agitated, giving people an indescribable sense of strength. This is Chopper's special form driven by 4 blue wave balls. The average enhancement of the whole body combines a series of enhancements such as brain enhancement, flexibility enhancement, wrist strength enhancement, fur enhancement, jumping enhancement, etc., and concentrated enhancement in the human form. This strengthening will give him a huge improvement in his overall basic quality. And it will not enter the bulky and huge form of monster enhancement. Of course, because of the enhancement of the 4 blue wave balls, this state cannot last for too long, although it is not as burdensome to the body as the monster enhancement. But maintaining combat power for a few hours at most is the best. And because of the negative effect of the blue wave ball, after the battle, it will make the body weak for a long time. But enough, as long as it helps Luffy. Chopper's eyes were firm, and he was looking at the huge figure slowly rising from the smoke, thinking secretly. Come on, Luffy, you are usually in front of us, this time, it's us. His thoughts drifted away slightly, as if he had returned to the country where there was heavy snow. Thank you for saving us, Doctor. Interesting, are you a monster too? Watch this. If this is your dream, then do your best to protect him. Join us, Chopper. If I can be your strength, Luffy, even if I become a real monster, I will not hesitate. The illusory eyes gradually solidified, and the battlefield was still full of gunpowder in front of him. Chopper smiled slightly, his eyes gradually calmed down. The sound of Luffy's firm footsteps walking away behind him is his greatest value affirmation at the moment. Tread, tread. Heavy footsteps came out from the smoke and dust, and he patted the dust on his body. What are you talking about? Zephyr is defeated. Damn it, is there only 50 Baileys? Another reason why you can't be defeated, otherwise, in Garp's place, you will be ridiculed for a lifetime. Zephyr walked completely out of the smoke and stood with his feet slightly apart. The blow just now didn't cause much damage to him at all. Admiral 670 level monsters, even if they are old and sick, are still monsters. Hey, little monster, have you made your final resolution yet? Zephyr showed a crazy smile, and the vigor of his body made the surrounding ground tremble slightly. He stepped on the ground suddenly, and his whole body flew out like a sharp arrow. Awakening or something, can it be called enlightenment if you hold the belief that you must die? Then, my awareness at the moment far exceeds that. You, don't try to pass by me and interfere, our captain. Chopper also yelled. On the crazy battlefield, the will of this gentle doctor seemed to be sublimated. Speed enhancement, carved hoof, soccer a flower. Good awareness, smashing and blasting. Zephyr laughed maniacally. The huge mechanical arm was swung by him as if it had no weight. Boom boom boom. In just a moment, the two monster-like figures began to punch to the flesh, the most impactful collision on this battlefield. Pure strength and boldness smashed the air into pieces. Countless crystal air waves, like shards of glass, exploded in all directions like streamers. What kind of monsters are the Straw Hat Pirates? That Dr. Chopper. Diamond Joe seemed to be meeting Chopper for the first time. That doctor who was very cute like a civet cat in his normal form, and a doctor with a good personality and a very simple and honest personality. At this moment, it seems that the craziest monster is fighting on par with the famous marine pillar on the sea, fiercely fighting like a monster. When people watch such a battle, they feel fear in their hearts. What is more important is not that strength, but that, the awareness, will, and courage displayed in the battle. Even in the face of Zephyr, he did not lose the wind in the slightest. There is no confusion about the fight. The magic of the Straw Hat. At this moment, Joe subconsciously no longer calls Luffy as Ace's younger brother, but uses that more formal nickname. He is the soul of the Straw Hat Pirates, the real core of the Straw Hat Pirates. On weekdays, he is careless like an idiot, but when it is really critical, it seems that everyone in the Straw Hat Pirates is willing to die for him. It's really hard to imagine what he did. Only then can these monsters who can be tough with Admiral be so determined to him. Even Diamond Josie couldn't help feeling a great deal of admiration for Luffy at the moment. It has nothing to do with strength, but something at a deeper level, the same thing as their captains are to their father. That is everyone's salvation when they are most desperate. Straw Hat Boy, he is like the father, who will give people redemption. Joe's follow up. Zephyr is stopped by the chopper of the same monster, they should charge up now and continue to charge after Luffy. I see, Chowzi said in a deep voice, and hurriedly followed. The enemy has been captured by the Straw Hat Pirates, and we can't show weakness. We are the Whitebeard Pirates. Cover the Straw Hats with all our strength and rescue Ace. Marco flew in the air and said loudly. He had always been by his father's side. However, the outbreak of the Straw Hat Pirates was beyond anyone's expectations. It was too strong. As soon as he took a shot, he firmly stopped the three Admiral-level powerhouses, and rushed into the encirclement of Marine like a sharp arrow. Originally, Marine's biggest advantage was the elite Marine soldiers dispatched from various places, and the number of those soldiers was much larger than that of Whitebeard. Even the strong, facing these elite soldiers, would consume a large part of their stamina if they wanted to defeat them. But it's different now. No one expected that the Straw Hat Boy would directly enter the inner square in front of the execution platform. The Conqueror's Haki went berserk, clearing out a large swath of Marine soldiers. And the monsters of the Straw Hat Pirates stood up one after another, firmly blocking the strong Marines, allowing the pirates to stand firmly in the inner square. Now, the Battle of the Powerful has divided several huge inaccessible areas in this square. This tore apart Marine's formation considerably. The battle range of Admiral-level powerhouses is already huge, and there is far more than one Admiral-level combat power on the scene. This is a very bad thing for the defending Marine. That's why, Whitebeard released all the team captains around him. With the war at this level, how could Whitebeard, who has a keen sense of war, not know how to seize the opportunity in time? With the sharp arrows of the Straw Hat Boys and the Straw Hat Pirates, they frantically pushed forward. Damn it, Straw Hat Pirates. Sengoku's face was contemplative. The battlefield he originally planned was the sea in front of the protective wall. After it was frozen into ice, it was the best battlefield. And on that battlefield, Sengoku also prepared at least 2 second players. However, at this moment, because of the Straw Hat Boy's reckless attack, his plan was accidentally destroyed. Raise the protective wall immediately. Sengoku roared loudly. Now we can't control that much anymore. If we don't raise the protective wall, and wait until the pirates of the Whitebeard Pirates completely break into the inner square, then the steel protective wall they carefully prepared will be of no use at all. The big thing is bad. Marshal Sengoku, the person in the control room, was killed by the Blackbeard people before. Now our people are rushing over. There was a voice from the phone bug. Marine's control room, the protective wall and the door of justice are all operated in the control room. But Blackbeard snatched the warship before Whitebeard came, and in order to enter Impel, he also entered the control room and opened the door of justice. At this moment, the protective wall is also difficult to be opened. Blackbeard. Sengoku gritted his teeth. If Blackbeard appeared in front of them now, he would beat them all to pieces. The barrier cannot be opened, Sengoku. Garp looked complicated, but he still reminded him. Our soldiers were all gathered in this narrow square before. If the protective wall is completely raised, the members of the Whitebeard pirates will be blocked on the ice, but our people will also be completely locked in the ice. In this square. The square in front of the execution platform is actually not small. However, too many Marine soldiers. CGDI. For this battle, tens of thousands of elite Marine soldiers were drawn and gathered in the square in front of the naval headquarters, making it very crowded. Under normal circumstances, the first battlefield is on the ice. In addition, Kizaru and Blackfoot, Zephyr and Tony Chopper, Haki and Rorno Azoro, 3 admiral-level battlefields, have already compressed this small square to a very small size. A large number of Marines surged towards the ice from the opening of the current protective wall. Not just to stop the pirates of the Whitebeard pirates. It is also a battlefield opened up to keep away from admiral-level monsters. Those admiral-level monsters, just the aftermath of the battle, made them, elite soldiers, unable to approach. It's such a small space. There are still quite a few admiral-level fighters here, and the opponent's Straw Hat Boys, Whitebeard, and Pluton Rayleigh, also didn't use their full strength. Really raise the protective wall. More than 10 admiral-level shots are enough to turn this square into a sheer hell. Those Marine soldiers who couldn't leave would be easily torn apart by the killing wave because of the narrowness of the battlefield and the battle with monsters. By that time, their tens of thousands of elite Marine soldiers will not be able to play much role at all, and they will be completely lost. It's like cutting off an arm. I see. Sengoku gritted his teeth and said in a low voice, "Don't raise the protective wall yet, let the soldiers all withdraw from the square to block the Whitebeard pirates on the ice and enter the square." "Your mind is totally messed up, Sengoku," Garp said in a low voice, somewhat melancholy. "It's not because of your wayward grandson," Sengoku growled. Only now did he see how much damage the Straw Hat Boy's reckless charge had brought to his plan. Almost all his previous arrangements were invalidated. Home field advantage, gone. And, what happened to the rookie pirates? The intelligence information was completely wrong. Sengoku looked down at the battlefield with an ugly face. The 3 admiral-level battlefields were all opened up by members of the Straw Hat Pirates. Pelusolino and Blackfoot, Zephyr and Tony Chopper, Haki and Rorno Azoro. Obviously, according to the previous information, Rorno Azoro, the strongest of the 3, can only deal with the modified Shichibukai bear, but now he can easily block the big bear. Cavity. Also, Blackfoot Sanji, Tony Chopper are completely underrated. If you count the Straw Hat Boys, a rookie pirate group, they actually have the combat power to block 4 admirals. What kind of Straw Hat Pirates is this? This is clearly the Luogia Pirates, or the level of Rocks Pirates. If it wasn't for the strong rise of the Straw Hat Pirates, how could Marine be so passive now? Pulled out all the power. Sengoku found that if it weren't for the Straw Hat Pirates, they would have at least 3 admiral-level combat powers, and they could easily make a move. The strategic significance of this is unimaginable. Rather than being like now, when most of the combat power is being restrained, he must always pay attention to the movements of Rayleigh and Whitebeard on the Moby Dick in the distance. "Sakazuki, I order you to use the strongest force to stop the Straw Hat Boy, and I will let Aokiji and the others assist you." Sengoku couldn't care less about Garp's mood at the moment, and yelled loudly at the phone bug. On the chair in front of the execution platform. At this moment, 2 of the top 3 chairs are empty, and only Akainu is still sitting there firmly. "I see," Akainu said lightly, then stood up slowly. Majestic and cold, with an unsmiling face, he looked down at the Straw Hat Boy who was charging towards the outer execution platform with an expression of impatience. "Monkey D. Luffy, the world's worst criminal, the son of the revolutionary dragon, you also have sinful blood in your body." The voice fell. On Akainu's black gloves, it became bright red, like molten iron, the red was a bit bright, and it even turned to bright yellow. Drop by drop fell to the ground, emitting black smoke. Pedal. There was a heavy stomping sound, and Akainu's majestic figure disappeared. Lava. Great eruption. The hot magma was emitting billowing black smoke, continuously condensing on Akainu's arm, and almost instantly, his right arm turned into a huge magma column like a hill. Like a volcano falling from the sky, the target is Luffy running below. A red light flashed in his eyes. The huge magma arm smashed down, easily broke his armament Haki, smashed him to the ground, and the hot magma burned his body. Almost hit him hard. A short future looms in Luffy's mind. Second gear. The surface of the skin instantly became bright, and white steam rose from the surface of the body, and Luffy's figure disappeared in place as if teleported. The moment his figure disappeared. Boom. As if a volcano fell from the sky, the thick black smoke almost covered the sky, and the dark red hot magma splashed around and hit the ground, forming a dark red magma. Colored pits. The heat wave was coming, making people slightly suffocated. "Admiral, Akainu." The expressions of Jinbei and Diamond Chaozi who followed from a distance changed. Among the 3 admirals, there is no conclusion as to who is stronger. But the one with the highest recognition is Akainu, because Akainu, on the sea, has the most murderous intent, the strongest will, and the cruelest methods. In battles of the same level, whoever has the strongest will and strikes the hardest will be able to stand at the end. Compared with the lazy Aokiji and Kizaru, it is obvious that the resolute and decisive Akainu is more able to be recognized by the strong. This is also recognized as the most dangerous existence among the three admirals. Coupled with his magma ability, in a frontal collision, few people can suppress him, but if he is hit by a kainu, it is very likely to be fatal. Brother Luffy, be careful. Jinbei shouted loudly. Amidst the heat wave and black smoke, Luffy lightly pressed the straw hat on top of his head. Even if Jinbei didn't remind him, he could still feel the power and terror of that magma monster standing opposite. Those who have played against each other so far, Aokiji and Kizaru, are not as dangerous as the admiral in front of them. I knew it wasn't that simple. Luffy looked at Akainu on the opposite side, flat road. Straw Hat Boy, your way ends here. Akainu walked towards Luffy step by step, the magma in his hand dripped little by little, emitting intense black smoke.